Magic Kingdom at War, Volume 4, by Tao Wong, narrated by Neil Helligers. Chapter 1. The only thing sadder than a battle won was the paperwork afterward. Or in this case, since there was no actual paper and instead a bunch of glowing lines across his map, it was mostly Matt Fang seated with his legs up on a chair and waving his hands around like a mad conductor. Every once in a while, he'd grimace and stop, the pain from the beating just a day ago coursing through his body. He hadn't realized until later, when the adrenaline had faded sufficiently, that he'd bruised his ribs. Then, of course, there were the torn skin and cuts across his face and arms that he hadn't even realized had happened during the scuffle, along with numerous other bruises. And he didn't even want to discuss the hanging piece of skin on the side of his face or the giant cut across his body that he'd had to have stitched up. Who'd have thought that a minute or two of fighting could end with so many bruises, even when you were the winner? Probably quite a few people, really, if Matt was being truthful. Bouncers, bodyguards, policemen, some army personnel. The ones who actually did physical things rather than paperwork or logistics or, the vast majority of other jobs. Martial artists, too, he guessed. None of them described the ex-accountant, of course. The most strenuous thing he'd done physically was a game of ultimate frisbee about 6 months ago, or, 6 months before his transfer, he guessed. He was kind of losing his sense of time. His mind split between the day he died and, everything that had happened after. Still, he at least knew how to check how long it had been since he'd arrived here. A flicker of his hands was enough to pull up the status report. Global status report. Day 53. Pooled gold, 236, plus 32.25 gold per day. Total units, 4 woodlings, 3 firecracker flowers. Cooldown, 9 days to burst production, 4 days to spellcasting. 53 days. Nearly 2 months since he had arrived, give or take a few days depending on how you counted what a month was. More importantly, the global status report was the biggest change in his report since he'd managed to take over the second town. Now, if he wanted to, had to, he'd be able to dig down into each town for individual management. On the other hand, the fact that he actually had a global pooled treasury and gold increase meant that he could build out towns differently. Specialize them, if you would. Make one just a gold producer, make the other place where he got units. At least, in theory, but naturally, when theory met reality, things went to hell. Part of that was, of course, the devil in the details when one went into individual town reports. Town 1 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village Number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith. Structures available. Grove 2, Basic Greenhouse, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Fishing Dock, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith, Upgrade. Town 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Stall 2, Temple 2. Both towns were quite different, at least in what they had concentrated upon. Some, like the Den and Javelin Range, or Grove and Ranged Copse, were just different names for the same thing. And the addition of the new town added more gold to his coffers, even though it also meant he had more places to spend all that new money on. Mostly Matt had spent this morning on verifying the basics of his original and new settlements, making sure his guesses, like what the training house was, were correct. There were enough differences that he'd wanted to deal with them with a clear head, even if he did lose a day or two of production, rather than engaging in it immediately following the battle the day before. He had to admit, after getting beaten up and maybe even mildly concussed, he had not been in any mental state to make big decisions. Never mind the fact that a part of him had still wondered if he would wake up in a new location after going to bed. Stranger things had happened. Now that he had done that, he needed to verify the unknown. In this case, the 2 buildings he hadn't himself purchased before but were available to him now, the tavern and the temple. Matt had to admit, he was most excited to see what the tavern was. Name, Tavern. Building type, Hero Management. Tier, Lesser Tier 1. Heroes available to recruit, Bard, Warlord. Number of available hero slots, 1. Matt blinked, staring at the building information. As usual, there was less to go on than he'd like. What other options were there in hero management? Could he train heroes if he upgraded the tavern further? A quick perusal of his available buildings list showed there was nothing like that right now. So was that a no, or just a possibility he had yet to find? He, obviously, poked at the hero types, but unfortunately there was no information available on them either. Now, he sorta knew what bards did in theory, except of course they might not be the same here. If they were, though, he could not see himself recruiting a singer. Would you like to recruit a bard? Cost 200 gold. Declining that option, Matt leaned back. He only had one available slot, and the previous opponent had commanded a healer of some form, and that came from the temple. He should look at that, rather than pick up a weird singer and lousy mage combination. On that note, time to look at the temple. Name, temple. Building type, hero management. Tier, Lesser Tier 1. Heroes available to recruit, priest. Number of available hero slots, 1. Matt pulled up the upgrades, too, just to get an eye on them. Not that he was planning on upgrading it right now, but getting a healer was never a bad idea, and he'd only seen a small amount of what the other hero was able to do, after all. Upgrade available, Temple 2. Building type, religious. Tier, Lesser Tier 2. Cost 350 gold. Production time, 12 days. Expensive, and no indication of what he'd get. If he had to assume, some bonus to morale perhaps, and more priest options. The only question was how expensive it would be to pick up the priest. Would you like to recruit a priest? Cost 200 gold. Wincing, Matt shook his head. As good as it sounded, he had a lot more to consider before he went spending his limited funds. After all, he once again had to balance his immediate needs with long-term growth. He no longer had an enemy directly in front of him, but they were out there. Somewhere. All of which meant reviewing his units in play. Chapter 2. Total units: 4 woodlings, 3 firecracker flowers. On one hand, that seemed like a lot. On the other hand, it really wasn't, not with his army split and needing to care for multiple villages. Braskar had no woodlings with him and a single firecracker flower. The rest were here, having been pulled back to guard Matt and Irvine. Well, except the woodling in the last village. Of course, other than the newly formed woodling and firecracker units, all of his units in town were damaged. He literally had one woodling in town that had only a single unit left. If not for pure luck, he would have lost 2 units entirely. As for his firecracker flowers, only half of the units remained here, though Braskar still had 2/3 of his soul unit. As it was, it would take days before the units regenerated. Now that he had 2 villages, he needed to reinforce them just in case they were destroyed or taken over by roving bandits. He assumed that was coming, since most of these games had such hindrances. So he'd have to move at least one of his units away to guard the furthest village at some point. If his opponent had not been in such a hurry, they might have taken his village first, depriving him of the gold while he got ready. Good news was that he had access to the Sakal. A flick of his finger brought up the info on the Den. Name, Den 2. Building type, barracks. Tier, Lesser Tier 2. Units available to produce, Sakal 2. 25 in 5. Not much information there. The Sakal units were interesting, though the details were obviously not too surprising after scanning them before in battle. Unit name, Sakal. Type, Beastkin. Tier, Lesser Tier 2. Number 6, movement 2. Cost 25 gold. Melee attack 15, melee defense 8, ranged attack 0, ranged defense 10, hit points 6, speed 12, special abilities charge 2, vulnerabilities sonic low, fire medium, growth potential high. High melee attack, lousy defense. Almost the opposite of his own woodlings. Skirmishers rather than frontline fighters. Matt was actually looking forward to seeing how they combined with his woodlings. Adding the Sakal pretty much put him in the optimal configuration for a starting battle. Heavy infantry, skirmishers, and ranged units. Of course, he'd love to upgrade them and maybe get some cavalry, but for a start it was damn decent. Which reminded him. "Raskar?" Matt called out into the air, trusting the magic to send the information to his hero even if he was in the other town. "My lord," the formal orc warlord replied immediately. Matt can almost imagine the orc coming to attention, even if he'd never actually seen him do that. "I'm thinking first things first. Get at least a Sakal building. What do you think?" Matt said. "We've got to know how they work with our units, see if the stupid system has any surprises hidden." "Surprises, my lord?" "Morale problems, issues with combining various troops of different species," Matt offered. "I don't think there'll be issues, but I'm not really willing to bet on it." "Wise choice, my lord." Raskar hesitated. "And the disposition of the rest of the units?" "Something I was going to ask about, too," Matt gestured, pulling up the map. There were multiple hexes between the two towns, something he could fix with purchasing roadworks between the pair, increasing both his gold income and speed of travel. However, the bigger question was the northwestern village, which had no guards right now and was their most vulnerable acquisition. Assuming, of course, there were not even more enemies further north. Right now, all they knew was that there was a potential enemy to the west. "We should not leave the recent conquest unattended. We know that doing so will not spawn automatic defenders like the villages," Raskar rumbled, "and new towns offer us the greatest increase in strength." Agreed. Though the militias the villages create are useless right now, they're barely a speed bump to the forces being produced. True, my lord. Are you thinking of sending a unit over to reinforce the northwestern village? Seems like it's the same problem, isn't it? Matt said grumpily. If we don't send enough people, they're barely useful either. Unless it is a scouting unit. Truth. The militia can't beat scouting units, but leaving a single unit can. Matt hesitated. Is that what you're suggesting? You have multiple units on hand, my lord. I think reinforcing the new village would be wisest. You have damaged units, do you not, my lord? Fine. Matt sent the most damaged unit to the nearest village, and then had the unit in that village head for Village 2. It would shorten the travel time for both. Even then, it would take a few days before it arrived, but better to get it started now. While he was at it, he quickly confirmed production of the Sakal. As they had discussed, that seemed the best option after all. While he was at it, he chose to start pushing a woodling and firecracker flower up to Braskar. It would make him weaker than he'd like here, but it would offer aid to his main fighting force. He could, if he wanted to, hire a hero. But while heroes were a multiplier when you had nearly nothing to work with, they weren't really worth buying. As such, hiring one was not high on his agenda right now. Replacing his units and upgrading the settlements seemed the best course of action. Is that all, my lord? Raskar rumbled, interrupting his thoughts. Yeah, for now. Keep... Matt hesitated, then asked. What are you doing? Looking over the stone keep. I have not seen one before, not being there when our own capital transformed, Raskar replied. I also intend to review the units and the remainder of the buildings here, my lord. A slight pause, then he added, and rest. Something I recommend you do too. Such a battle and its aftermath can be taxing on the mind. You mean nearly dying? Matt said, tracing the crusted blood on his face. Yeah, I bet. I will. But working is keeping me going right now. Not as though I slept well last night. Nightmares had kept waking him, even as his body had lulled him back to sleep soon after as exhaustion, injuries, and adrenaline had taken their toll. But this is like playing a video game, and that was restful for me. Back then. I see, my lord. Matt knew Braskar only had the vaguest idea of what he meant by video game, what with coming from a more primitive world. But the orc was willing to take his word for it, which was the point. Just be careful. I am sure the alchemist is already resting. You'd have won that bet, Matt said, chuckling. He'd poked his head in on Irvine. The older hero had been splayed on his bed, jugs of wine next to him, and completely dead to the world. Ta for now. Killing the connection before Braskar pursued the questioning further, Matt focused on his next steps. Having over 200 gold gave him options, including more units, the fishing dock, the trading post, the blacksmith, and a stall upgrade. A quick check showed no further information on the blacksmith, so no guarantee that it'd stack upgrades across towns. Buying the next level of the blacksmith for defense was cheap, relatively speaking, at 50 gold. On further consideration, Matt was pretty certain the blacksmith only worked on units built within the town. It wouldn't make sense to have the option in each town otherwise. So, units or gold? Or both? As usual, it seemed to come down to security now versus more options in the future. Chapter 3. Security or gold? Which was more important? Never mind the fact that Matt had been attacked from the east, what else could he buy? And what, if any, concerns should he have about the monsters coming from the west and the south? He could go all in, buy a ton of gold-producing buildings. The fishing dock was only 100, the stall upgrade 75. It'd mean all his gold would be used, but then next day he could just buy 2 units. Or he could start the units immediately and then add the buildings later. A quick flick to pull up details on the fishing dock had him regarding the details. Structure available, fishing dock. Building type, treasury. Tier, lesser tier 1. Benefit plus 5 gold per day. Cost 100 gold. Production time, 3 days. Not much information in there, almost exactly the same as the stall, except a little bit faster to build. The upgraded stall would take even longer, but had the advantage of being cheaper, of course, which was not a consideration to be ignored since the return on investment for upgrading would make it available within 15 days rather than the 20 that the dock had. All well and good, and 3 days was not a long time. In fact, there was an argument that he was spending too much time debating this, what with the degree of optimization in play probably being overly inflated in his mind. After all, he could see far enough out that it was unlikely for an enemy unit to sneak up on him, and as such, he could debate whether to buy gold producers versus units now or later. On the other hand, having an idea of which to prioritize, military or gold, was likely going to mean less debate in the long term. Military or gold? Matt drummed his fingers on the table. Considering how long it takes to build units, there's something to be said about front-loading unit production. I could even double my purchase, pick up all 3 units available across all the settlements. It would take a total of 45 more gold, putting him down to 161. He could still get the fishing dock then, but not the upgraded stall, or any of the other gold producers, though those 2 were the cheapest and most efficient. He'd complain about lack of flexibility, but thus far, it wasn't as though he could hurry production, so he'd just have to suck it up anyway. That was probably the sticking point. Since he couldn't hurry production, units probably were the most important aspect to get moving, with the need for further protection. His greatest danger was having someone wander in and start a fight right after he sent off all his units. Get more units up just in case I get attacked, and then worry about gold later. Matt listened to his words rebound off the stone walls, waiting to see if doing so would reveal any foolish ideas expressed. Since no random voice shouted at him, he locked in the changes and leaned back. Done and done. He bought the 2 units, watched his gold drain, and smiled to himself. He even had a plan for tomorrow, after which he'd have to start sorting out what else he would build. There were a number of interesting, unknown buildings and options left, like the temple and its upgrade, the priest and the trading post. Though, maybe at some point he should also add the road to his list of things to add. Building roads didn't seem to increase much in terms of gold, but the ability to quickly move armies between locations was important. Wasn't there something about how Rome managed their empire because of their roads? Though that had failed them eventually. Then again, they also didn't have a magic telephone system and hovering tactical maps. If Octavius wouldn't hang him for a heretic or witch or whatever, he'd probably be showered in praise if he ever showed them this. Or hell, Shi Huang Ti. though that was one tyrant that Matt had no desire to provide additional aid to. That was not a nice man, not at all, even if he had managed to build a society that had lasted centuries. Right. How much for a road, then? Matt said. Or roads. 10 gold to Village 2 from here. 20 for the road to the other town. Only worth half a gold per turn in addition. More than that, it looked like he'd have to pay another 10 gold to connect Town 2 to Village 2. So in total, he'd be looking at 40 gold. Ouch, Matt grumbled. He flicked the options up on the board, then frowned as he spotted a potential sidestep. You little cheaters. A quick adjustment had him highlighting the movement from Town 2 to Village 1. 10 gold, a quarter gold increase. But now he had a full road between both towns that pushed through the village rather than be a separate circuit. That was fine. It wasn't any different from the town-to-town road, just no additional half gold, which I can live with. And then, if he added roads to Village 2, he'd have a full setup running for 30 gold. Cheaper by a bit, though it would mean he couldn't purchase a stall upgrade. Army logistics first, money second. Matt chanted to himself, confirming the choices. He took a breath, then added the fishing dock. 100 gold and a 3-day start now was important. It was the right choice. He knew it, or so he assured himself at least. Nothing left to do, he dismissed the map and stood up. Braskar was right. Whatever else, he needed a day off. Maybe a few days. After all, he had made the necessary decisions. Now it's just a matter of seeing how it played out. Damn turn-based games really were better left as actual games. Global status report at the end of Chapter 3. Day 53, end of day. Pooled gold, 36, plus 32.25 gold per day. Total units, 4 woodlings, 3 firecracker flowers. Cooldown, 9 days to burst production, 4 days to spellcasting. Unit organization. Town 1, Irvine, 1 woodling, 1 firecracker flowers. Town 2, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling, and 1 firecracker flower, en route. Village 1, 1 woodling, en route from town. Village 2, 1 woodling, en route from Village 1. Town 1 status report. In production, 1 woodling, 04, 1 firecracker flower, 05, road to village number 2, 03, fishing dock, 03. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith. Structures available. Grove 2, Basic Greenhouse, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade. Town 2 status report. In production, Sakal 2, 05, Road to Village number 1, 03. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Stall 2, Temple 2. Chapter 4. To Matt's surprise, right after he finished making the decisions and having a late brunch, he'd found himself suddenly weary beyond belief. Crashing in his makeshift workplace had caused him to wake up with a crick in the neck, helped a little more by food for dinner and a long soak. The next day, he checked the map over cursorily. Without anything better to do and with little enough gold, he moved on to taking a slow, careful review of the stone keep. His pit traps that were entirely non-standard, and his crossbow. Fixing all that, or at least getting the materials to fix it all, had taken the majority of the day, what with his body still exhausted and aching. He had to admit he'd not been particularly rigorous or enthused with his chores. It sucked when even breathing was a pain. Now, 2 days later, the team was having their very first all-hands meeting. Irvine had returned to working on creating batches of potions due to the units having nothing to their name. Since the potions of strength and defense had been so intrinsic to their battles, Matt was all for the man working on those. "Do you have options for more potions?" Matt said. A foolish hope for Irvine, what with his recent leveling, but he had to ask. "New levels, maybe?" Both heroes declined, though Braskar was moving at a decent clip to his second. So was Irvine, now that he'd returned to making potions. Do you think you're better off doing burst production to get some potions of defense or strength for our units here and then getting back to research? Matt asked Irvine, curious. When you have it back, that is. The wiry old hero frowned. Like Matt, he was human, though his world had been one filled with magic and wonder, unlike Matt's own dull, paper-clipped, spreadsheet-filled existence. On the other hand, indoor plumbing and proper ventilation were wonders that Matt was never going to discount, even if the magical equivalents in the Stone Keep were doing better than their previous fort. I could, my lord, but I get more experience creating potions directly, and my chances of failure have dropped significantly, Irvine said. Yeah, but you made them faster with burst, right? Yes, Irvine hesitated, then added, if you order me, I shall do so. If. Matt drawled the word out, then waved away the alchemist's protests. Later. Can't do anything now anyway. Braskar, anything to report? Nothing, my lord. I wish to ask for the right to begin further exploration north, the orc rumbled. Matt could almost imagine the gray-skinned, tusked figure speaking to him at attention, or maybe standing on the walls of the Stone Keep, staring wistfully into the distance. Not east, Matt said, surprised. I believe there is much to see north of us, Braskar said, and while we know of a threat to the east, that threat is, we believe, automated. The raiders aren't real, so they're less dangerous, eh? Matt could see the logic in that. Certainly a thinking and active opponent was more dangerous, as they just experienced. Of course, they were also prone to mistakes and overconfidence. If they hadn't rushed the attack on his own capital, it might have taken his team a lot more effort to grind them down. We also know that we have the sea to the south. Perhaps there might be a similar obstacle further north, Braskar said. Isthmus or peninsula or island, you think, rather than just the edge of a continent, Matt hummed. He had to explain the terms to Irvine, though it did give him time to consider the suggestion further. It would help to know the lay of the land, though. I'd still prefer if we kept you closer on hand. We'd seen the difference a good warlord makes in battle. You also need more units. And if we find another village, we could create a new line of defense, Braskar said. Not much defense, really, the villages. Visibility, then. What do you think? Matt asked Irvine, who had been quiet thus far. Seems to me like we're rushing. We don't even have enough units to guard everything, the alchemist grumbled, waving a hand at the tactical map hovering before them. If we expand even further, who knows what we'll encounter? What if the opponents to the north decides to chase us down? Instead, we wait for them to find us, Braskar said. Waiting to be prey is not how orcs behave. Good thing I'm not an orc. I am. You think heading north is the best option? Matt said softly. I do, my lord. With what units? The Sakal will be available in 3 days, and we know nothing is within range now, Braskar said. I can be back long before there is an issue, if so. I don't like it, Matt said. But okay, go for it. He paused, then added, I want you to plan a route to link up with the Sakal when it's done. I'll build the second one immediately after. Once we have them, I'll start moving a woodling and firecracker up to the town. A good plan, my lord. That's going to leave us a little short here, Irvine protested. Same reasoning, though, Matt said. We'll see any problems long before they arrive, or should, at least. And we have other units building now. He reached out to the map, tracing his fingers along the roads. Almost makes sense to start considering building a reactionary force in the first village. It's close enough to this town to offer almost immediate help, and if it's large enough, we could use it to intercept enemies. When we have enough units, sure, Irvine said pointedly. One step at a time. I shall set out then, my lord, unless there is anything further to discuss, Braskar said. A quick glance at the alchemist, who was also standing and getting ready to leave, answered that question for Matt. Bidding the pair of heroes farewell, Matt pulled up the town information and sighed. There really never were enough funds. but at least he could get moving on the upgraded stall. Soon, they'd have some real money. Now, if things could continue staying quiet, it'd be perfect. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 4. Day 56. End of day. Pooled gold, 57.75 plus 32.25 gold per day. Total units, 4 woodlings, 3 firecracker flowers. Cooldown 6 days to burst production, 1 day to spellcasting. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 1 woodling, 1 firecracker flowers. Town number 2, Brascar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 firecracker flower, and 1 woodling en route. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling, en route from village number 1. Town number 1 status report. In production, 1 woodling, 3 of 4, 1 firecracker flower, 3 of 5. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Road to Village number 2, Fishing Dock. Structures available. Grove 2, Basic Greenhouse, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade. Town number 2 status report. In production, Sockall 2, 3 of 5, Stall 2, 0 of 7. Structures completed, Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall, Road to Village number 1. Structures available, Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2. Chapter 5. Travel was slow, but travel was at least progress as far as Brascar was concerned. His people were nomads, and staying still in a fort while unknown enemies ranged a field sat ill with him. Better to journey forth and confront them. The fact that the Sockall were fast-moving was just a bonus. They could catch up and reinforce his army whilst he was moving, and out here the random encounters his units faced would allow them to grow. Himself as well. The fact that his units were damaged and still healing did not matter, since their own losses during the battle had been mostly insignificant, other than the woodling unit, and that had been a complete loss. So, nothing to heal there. More importantly, up here for the first couple of hexes. How strange to consider terrain as hexes, even if the entire world was based on it. The ground was featureless, minorly rolling plains. He knew better than to assume that he could spot everyone, for even minor changes in terrain could hide a wily opponent. It did mean that travel so far had been less torturous than movement through a forest. The forest that was coming up would soon slow them down, and linking up with the Sockall unit would be interesting. He had a feeling that some degree of magical adjustments would occur to ensure they actually met. If not, well, that too was new information, as his lord would say. Brascar chuckled, stretching his back as he turned to regard his unit. Strange plant creatures, these tottering multi-limbed flowers that followed. His little army, made even stranger when the Sockall, loping beast-like creatures, would join in the future. If I was to make this even vaguely normal, I would situate enemies on either side and away in a ring. So the question is whether this would be in a direct line or further apart. Brascar asked the heir, knowing there was no one to speak to, which was for the best. He was not sure he liked giving in to the weird logic of this universe, though in-world, of course, there was some logic to settlements being separated too. That logic of settlements forming a distance from one another was often dictated by the amount of resources available, or the position of specific resources. In his world, mining camps and the towns and villages that made use of natural resources would appear, farming villages in the plains, fishing villages next to rivers and lakes. You could tell where to raid or where villages would likely be if you knew the terrain or could read the way a land formed itself. Nothing like that in this new world, where towns were plopped down by some unseen force. No, the town they had just left had been in the center of the plains, but there had been fields to farm the land around it. Any reasonable settler would have chosen the lakes a short distance away for access to fresh water rather than the drier land. Raiding logic was of less use here, but the creator logic, that might make sense. If discussions with his lord had any sense, then this entire world was meant to be a challenge. Not much of a challenge if you overwhelmed the fighters immediately, so he expected, though he didn't tell his lord, to find their opponent a distance away. Still, no guarantee there were no scouts. If anything, that was likely what he would find, if not more raiders. What those were, he did not know. His lord had said it was a feature of these games to add difficulty in the early stages. Destroying them gave bonuses, allowing each opponent to develop somewhat before they clashed. Yet that logic had fouled as they located their first enemy almost immediately, so that seemed foolish to believe. No, the raiders, as far as Braskar was concerned, were a different thing. Perhaps a chance to gain greater strength. In either case, it was not his task to aid his lord in that endeavor, but to focus on finding their true enemies. Now, if only they could cover more ground. Irvine stretched, feeling the muscles in his shoulders shift. He winced as he felt the back of his head, his torso, and his arms all twinge. Thankfully, this world seemed to help him heal faster than ever, such that he was less injured already than he should be. Not so his lord, of course. But Irvine and Braskar seemed to be more suited to this existence. Perhaps it would be a not-so-subtle hint for his lord to stay out of the direct battles, which, all due given, he had tried. Unfortunately, matters had progressed beyond that, forcing him to do battle. Looking around his room, Irvine smiled. He could not help but feel a surge of pride at the alchemical laboratory that was his. Even at the height of his success, he had never had as many tools, instruments, and ingredients on hand. Certainly not glass that was so clear, burners that were so well made that he could try the flame with such exactness. A moment later, that pride dimmed a little. So many of the tools and ingredients were still locked out, forcing him to only stare at them. It was the height of idiocy that the world system forced him to only use certain items and refused to open drawers or unscrew caps. He'd even tried breaking a few bottles, only to find them unbreakable, which could have been useful if not for the fact that they could not be removed from the room. His hands still ached from the bruising they had taken when he'd used a stone club on one of those jars. Still, ever since his level increase, he'd had more access than ever. While he would have preferred to focus on the research of new recipes, or recreate the very same potions he had once gained fame for in his previous life, this world and the ingredients were strange, different enough that he knew better than to assume anything. Right now, his job was to create the potions for the rest of their remaining units. Matt had never verified what he had decided upon, which meant Irvine could do what he thought best, gain experience making new potions. Each time he went through the process, he felt himself getting better, more experienced. Every day, a new potion, or every 2 days if he failed one day. A decent production speed, no matter what his lord said, especially since it seemed that each unit could only carry a single potion. No chance of loading down a single unit with multiples of the same kind or multiple potions at all. It was an exploit that his lord had attempted recently, one that had just resulted with the woodling in question staring back at Matt blankly as he offered the vial to it. Now, that had been an amusing sight. Irvine stretched. Proper stretching was part and parcel of long-term survivorship of alchemists. He had seen all too many of his compatriots blow themselves up or poison themselves because of a bad cramp. Fools, all of them. Done, he leaned over the cauldron, checking its content. Purple and yellow, just right, except why were there flecks of gray in there? Improper stirring? Or a new contaminant? Humming to himself, Irvine got to work. This is what he enjoyed, and after decades of work, he still found a love for the process of alchemical creation. After growing so decrepit he'd no longer been able to reliably work in his own laboratory, this was a pleasure. Almost worth dying for. Chapter 6. The next few days passed by in a blur for Matt. The moment the Sakal had been created, he had sent it after Braskar as promised. Immediately after, he'd started the process of training another. At the very worst, he figured he'd at least continue producing the strange creatures, since they were his closest equivalent to the cavalry the raiders had sent. He also kept running additional units because he knew he needed more fighting power, especially frontline fighters. Getting another one up immediately was a bit of a drain on his resources because he was still incredibly poor. Braskar needed another, the new town needed another, and he wanted more himself. Then, of course, there was the firecracker flowers to deal with, but in this case, he knew better than to split the units off. Better to have a larger contingent in his fort than otherwise. And if there was perhaps a touch of paranoia and fear in that decision, who could blame him? While he couldn't say he didn't exactly not volunteer to get attacked, he certainly hadn't chosen to do so on purpose. After that, with insufficient gold to do much more than wait, he did just that. He figured after this last build, he would have enough for the army he needed to scout the east. The ranged units survived longer than their melee ones, after all. Another new building, or an upgrade, or perhaps enough gold for a hero was now the focus. He still had concerns about hiring another hero, though he could see how important they were in the overall scheme of things. If anything, he almost wished for another warlord. Pity that he only had one slot and no idea how to increase the number available, or whether he always had 3 slots, or what he could have triggered to increase that allocation. He had guesses, the temple acquisition, the tavern, the new town, but it had all come at the same time, offering no further information. The fishing dock, when it had finally been completed, had offered only a minor upgrade. Structure available: fishing wharf, building type treasury, tier lesser tier 2, benefit plus 10 gold per day, cost 250 gold, production time 7 days. No new buildings. Matt had a feeling that if he wanted to pursue additional upgrades along the water, he needed to build the shipyard. Might even get a naval unit out of that. Sadly, he did not have the funds to pursue such a project at this moment. After all, he had known enemies coming from the west. It was that belief that had him considering pouring more funds into unit building, hoping to create a force that could match whatever was coming. He figured at least 3 units, potentially 4 with a Sakal unit added to it, would be sufficient even without a hero. 2 woodlings, a firecracker flower, and a Sakal would be perfect, or swap a woodling for a firecracker flower in the hope that they had enough stopping power. Of course, that would leave him nearly destitute again with significant unit production and no more buildings. He was also constrained by the speed that units could come out, which had him thinking that upgrading the next town would be the way to go. With all this idle time, Matt took his time rebuilding his crossbow. It hadn't worked very well against the plate mail, which meant it hadn't worked well at all. With the blacksmith in play and the wood from the woodling and the grove, it was a simple matter to get the base materials. Thankfully, taking simple tools from the blacksmith was a non-issue. The problem, more than anything else, was figuring out how to build it. It wasn't as though he had spent any real time in a machine shop back on Earth, or even spent time looking at crossbows. Even if he did manage to make one, the bolts it threw were another problem. Certainly getting actual metal points on his bolts would help with the penetration power. Still, becoming a semi-competent bowyer was at least a project he could pursue right now. Unlike the pit traps, where even a brief attempt at digging with bruised ribs and a giant wound that was barely stitched together had informed Matt that that was a foolish idea. Brief, in this case, was the first sinking of a shovel into the earth. It took another 4 days before another major change occurred, just over 12 days since the end of their big battle. That was when the stall upgrade was finished, adding another 5 gold to his gold production, but most importantly, access to new buildings. In this case, not just the marketplace that had appeared before, but also a granary. Structure available: granary. Building type: unit upgrade. Tier: lesser tier 2. Benefit: -1 day to production speed of units. Cost 250 gold. Production time 7 days. Holy staples on a Wednesday. Matt flopped into his chair. That's, well, a game changer? Maybe? He really was not sure, but it certainly was quite the difference. Braskar? The answer came back almost immediately. My lord? Busy? No, my lord. Scouting, but there's not much to report. Is there a problem? Nah, just a new structure. A short while later, after Braskar was up to speed, Matt added, What do you think? It seems to me that this is quite the change. Is there a way to replicate this in our own town? Braskar asked. No idea. I got it after the stall upgrade, but we already have that. Maybe if we purchase the marketplace, might be a town exclusive in the plains since they don't have a harbor, Matt said. In fact, I'd lean towards that. Maybe the granary would come in much later at best. I see, my lord. Do you intend to purchase this upgrade? You'd think so, wouldn't you? Matt said softly. But I think it might be a trap. A trap? Not in the traditional sense, but an early production trap. What happens if we purchase it? Braskar sounded truly puzzled. We are able to produce units faster, right? But units aren't any cheaper. And what's our biggest problem? Lack of gold. Exactly. We'd fall into the same production trap as our previous opponent. He was so focused on building units, he didn't ever increase his gold production. In the short term, that gives you more units to throw at your opponents, but the moment opponents get their production going, you're hosed. If we even had another 10 days, I bet we'd have beaten them without a worry, Matt said. So you're worried this is a similar problem. We will get caught up in producing units only, falling behind on gold production, Braskar said. Exactly. I see. Braskar fell silent for such a long time that Matt thought he had gone offline. When he did speak, Matt nearly jumped out of his chair, having returned to poking at the interface to see if he could replicate the granary in their original town. You are right, I believe. Well done, my lord. Yeah, Matt said, holding a hand to his chest. Right, well, you get back to scouting, and I'll get back to being smart and strategic, eh? Yes, my lord. There was amusement in the orc's voice, as though he could sense Matt's true thoughts. Perhaps he could. In either case, the office worker waited for a long time to make sure that Braskar really was done and gone before he returned to pursuing the build table. No granary. 270 gold and change. A decent amount of gold production now, actually, though it could be better. Truth be told, he'd left it to run a little long, but he had been wanting to see what the stall would create, never mind the fishing dock. Now he had options to make more gold, or to buy a hero, or begin the marketplace, or trading post. One area he had not perused was the equivalent of the unit upgrades. He did seriously wonder if the time had come for him to do so. In particular, Matt could not help but turn his attention to the basic greenhouse. The fact that it had cost 500 gold before had stopped him from considering that as an option, but now? Before he made up his mind, Matt flipped the unit information on again. Structure available. Basic greenhouse. Building type. Evolutionary. Tier lesser tier 1. Benefit. Allows research into new unit types and evolutions. Cost 500 gold. Production time 20 days. 20 days. That was the killer, wasn't it? 20 days to produce once you had the funds. On top of that would be all the time to make whatever new units or research unit types that came from it. It was almost certain none of his other opponents had purchased that building in the previous battles. How could they have? And how would they even be considered a threat if they did? The same problem with unit and gold production would plague them, even if they had a bit of a head start. Now, however, if he chose not to acquire it, what kind of disadvantage did he put himself in the future? In some ways, no way to know. Until he got it, he probably wouldn't. So, evolutionary choices next, all while building up his secondary army down here, and hoping that Braskar didn't find anything dangerous. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 6. Day 64. End of day. Pooled gold. 249.75 plus 42.75 gold per day. Total units. 6 woodlings, 5 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal, cooldown none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 3 woodlings, 3 firecracker flowers. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling, 1 sakal. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal en route. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Town Number 1 Status Report. In production, 1 woodling, 3 of 4, 1 firecracker flower, 1 of 5. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village Number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock. Structures available. Grove 2, Basic Greenhouse, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town Number 2 Status Report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary. Chapter 7. A day later, and Matt finally had an army worth calling, well, an army. No sign of a cavalry or any other kind of enemy thus far, which was all good and fine. Matt could take a few quiet days, though he was growing more concerned each moment there wasn't a problem. Still, with 4 woodlings and 3 firecracker flowers, he felt he could split off some for his expeditionary army. Obviously a little risky, but keeping 2 woodlings and a single firecracker flower behind that would be reinforced in a few days should be fine, especially since he was sending the army in the direction of the most likely problem. More than that, he could always pull the Village Number 1 woodling back if things got tricky. He was almost tempted to do that right now, really. Resolved to start out the second army, the only question was whether to send it right along the coast like before or swing a little north of the coast. He'd already mapped the coast, so it made little sense to repeat the same trail, other than to hunt down his enemy immediately. "What do you think?" Matt asked the team during their morning meeting. "If we keep them just slightly north of the coastline," he gestured at the map that only Irvine and he could see, "we'd be charting more hexes, see a little more of what's out there, which isn't a bad thing, I think." "I'd agree that it's not a bad thing, but—" Irvine hesitated, then added, "But I'm still not convinced we should be removing so many of our units. What if they do get routed? Then what?" "Hopefully they'd retreat in time," Matt said. "We know they can retreat." "And yet, have almost never seen it," Irvine said. "I must agree that the risk you're running seems a little high, my lord," Braskar said, echoing the alchemist. "Are you certain this is what you wish to do?" "I am," Matt said firmly. "I can't keep hiding. We can't keep hiding." "There is nothing to be ashamed of in admitting you are afraid," Braskar added. "I'm not—" Matt hesitated, then slowed down and exhaled. "I'm not saying I'm not afraid, but I'm not doing this to show I'm not scared. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do." "If you are certain, my lord." "And I'm not being asked," Irvine grumbled, arms crossed. "You going to say anything other than to not do it?" Matt raised an eyebrow at the alchemist, who just shrugged. "Yeah, didn't think so." A flicker of his fingers had the units moving, pulling away from the walls and their grove and marching out the open doors. He also pulled the sockall that had been completed and sent it down to meet with the burgeoning army, knowing it was necessary. Now, hopefully, they'd not run into any major obstacles. The next decision was how much more to add to his people. In the end, he had chosen to hold off till the most recent firecracker flower was finished. He could have added another sockall, but he was still trying to save money for the greenhouse. Of course, 3 days after that, apart from a few random encounters with angry wildlife by Braskar, they had yet to see signs of further opponents. Irvine had, thankfully, created extra potions before he had begun researching, allowing them to stock the units leaving with at least a single potion of strength each. On the other hand, that had led to quite a bit of complaints from the alchemist, even if he continuously increased his experience. Matt figured that in a few days, Irvine would finally decide to just utilize burst production just to have a chance to do research. It was the next day that the Second Army ran into the first enemy unit. No real surprise, it was a cavalry unit. What was a surprise and frustration was that the entire incident had happened without any member of the team noticing the battle beginning or ending. Irvine had been working on his potions, Matt on a new crossbow. No notification had appeared for either, and by the time Matt had returned to the map room later that day, only a notice that the fight had begun and ended had been there. Of course, he called a meeting with Braskar soon after, the orc quite irritated at the lack of his own encounters. "It seems you were right. The combination of our ranged units and the Sakal are quite effective," Braskar said. "How'd you come to that conclusion?" Matt asked. "The minimal loss of units, even though you encountered the cavalry in the most disadvantageous of conditions," Braskar explained. "And that is?" "Open plains." "Right." Matt found himself nodding, recalling some nerdy arguments about the use of cavalry and how movies never did them right. Still, if that was the case, would woodlings be considered heavy or light infantry? Perhaps just medium. "Any other insights?" "Perhaps one," Braskar said. "Stop producing units." "I thought you were complaining about me not being sufficiently safe before." "That was before. You should be sufficiently covered for now." Matt considered, wanting to object. He had held off on buying another unit yesterday already, after all, though he had been playing with the idea of adding more Sakal and woodlings. "Why?" he finally asked. "Our current moving mixture seems effective. Till we have a better idea of our opponent, it is best to wait." "Fine," Matt said with a long sigh. He had 468.5 gold right now, plus a small trickle coming in from the battle, another 42 and change to be produced the next day. That literally put him at the point where he'd be able to get the greenhouse, which was the point. After that, though, he had meant to add more to the army. If he chose not to do that, though, well, there were other buildings to be made, gold production buildings, a hero that he'd ignored for too long. Options, basically. Options he'd ignored because he might have swung too far into security. "Yeah, fine. I'll stop doing a CMA maneuver," Matt said. "Hopefully, nothing new arrives." "Hopefully." Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 7. Day 69, end of day. Pooled gold, 468.5, plus 42.75 gold per day. Total units, 7 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 Sakal. Cooldown none. Unit organization. Town number 1. Irvine, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers. Town number 2. 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling. Army number 1. Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 Sakal. Army number 2. 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 Sakal en route. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Town number 1 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock. Structures available. Grove 2, Basic Greenhouse, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary. Chapter 8. When it rained, it poured. Confirming production of the greenhouse the next day was a quick and simple matter, though watching all 500 of his hard-earned gold disappear with the click of a notification was a little painful. Still, it had begun, and in 20 days he would know what it was that he had bought. This was what it must have felt like buying something from a late-night shopping channel, thinking and dreaming of how good the product you're purchasing would be, the anticipation of some marvel, even if you knew deep down it would be nowhere near as good as they had promised. Of course, that had not been the only thing that happened that day. To start with, Braskar had yet to locate a new opponent. Over 20 days of travel back and forth had seen him confirm that the mountain range on the west continued into the distance. He had spent a few days moving along the range and even entering one pass, only to find it stymied by a lack of passage, all the while complaining about sore feet. The good news was that the mountain range at least meant that attacks from the west could be stopped if they ever figured out where the passes were. On the other hand, other than a singular mountain he'd spotted almost due north of the second town and another series of mountains to the east, the majority of the land he'd found was comprised of flat plains or forest hexes. Checking against the border of the mountains and traversing the hills had given hints that the mountain range might end eventually, or just have a passage, much further north. They'd had quite the debate if he should verify that, but in the end, the orc had then shifted east, moving across the plains through forest, and then plains, and then more forest, in search of additional trouble. It was when he was in the northeast, as oriented from the second town, that the orc finally ran into trouble. The snap of wings opening was the only indication of a coming attack. Braskar threw himself backwards, moments before large claws reached out to grab at him. Even as fast as he moved, the edges of those claws ripped along the edges of his armor, sending a long screech through the air. Hitting the ground hard, Braskar still managed to roll over and come up with his knife, his axe slung over his back in a bad position for easy retrieval at that moment. His own attack had just been the precursor. For all around him, the snap of wings and the screech of their enemies resounded. The cry was strange, like an orc trying to imitate a bird, which was not too surprising when one considered their attackers. Braskar knew, instinctively, these were harpies, though he had never seen them before. A piece of information granted to him after his death, which would have been distracting if he was not in a fight for his life. Even so, staring at the attackers, Braskar could not help but catalog their features. Creatures with arms extending from the back that were covered in feathers and ended with long clawed fingers, not actual feet but bird feet beneath, tucked up under a shorter torso, and large tail feather plumage at the back. Those clawed feet were being used to great effect as they grasped and tore at the firecracker flowers. Clear sap flowed from deep wounds, some of the harpies having landed on the ground and using their clawed fingers to strike at their targets. Others were hovering in midair, desperately flapping their arms as they attempted to kick and tear at their opponents. As always, the wood elementals were unnervingly silent in their struggles, leaving the all-too mortal noises to others. In this case, that included the Sakal. Returning from scouting ahead, the group ran on all fours to rejoin the battle. Soon enough, they'd closed in on the harpies and launched themselves with their charge ability. However, they were not as quick as the firecracker flowers. The explosions from their water-generated ranged attacks sent speeds spiraling out of their arms. They were deafening, causing Braskar's ears to ache. The flowers leaned backwards as they attacked, seeds flying through the air to pierce flesh and feathers alike. Harpies dropped, some thrown off bodies by surprise or a lucky blow, others flapping desperately as their wings were pierced or they attempted to dodge. On the ground, the charging Sakal met the few that stalked forward with ferocity, tearing into them and leaving nothing but a mess of blood and feathers. A few remaining members of the unit lifted off, gaining altitude quickly as they dodged the explosion of flying seeds. One dropped, peppered so badly it could no longer keep itself aloft. However, 2 of those members survived, leaving the range of the firecracker flowers and winging off into the distance. Any of the creatures who stayed on the ground were lost, torn apart with ease. Braskar stared at his unbloodied knife before he sheathed it angrily. Trained eyes roamed his own units, finding that he had lost only 3 members of the firecracker flowers. There was other damage, a long claw mark on a Sakal, an arm torn off. Not a bad result, all things considered. So why was he furious still? 12 units. You're sure? Matt was saying later after Braskar had filled him in. I am, my lord. 10 fallen to my people, 2 who managed to retreat, Braskar said. 3 firecracker flowers lost. Good job, Matt muttered absently as he stared at the information. Battle report, Hero Braskar versus enemy unit. Result, victory. 1 unit escaped. Rewards, +0 gold, +1 reputation. No gold this time, Matt said. I wonder if that's because we didn't destroy the unit entirely? It stands to reason, my lord. And we know units regenerate, right? Matt said slowly. 'Yes, my lord.' 'Crap, my lord.' You might want to pull back, Matt replied. Braskar stayed silent at first, Matt allowing the orc time to catch up. He had realized the warlord liked to come to his own conclusions. You fear they will conduct hit-and-run tactics wearing my people down? I do not believe that is much of a concern as you believe. They have more individuals per unit than you, but are more fragile, Braskar grunted. If we retreat now, it only allows them to roam unopposed. Better to hunt down their city, and we have the woodling coming. However, you can't hurt them, but they can you. If they keep rotating units out, they'll slowly win. Depending on how many they have, this could be bad. This time around, they hit all of you. Next time, they might focus on your ranged units. And I do not believe they can target so carefully. Not without a hero. No guarantee they won't arrive either. Are you ordering me back, my lord? Now Matt had to hesitate. Arguing pros and cons with Braskar was one thing, but in the end, the question was whether to listen to the warlord's instincts and push ahead or pull back. He knew Braskar was aggressive, and he himself a little defensive. How much was too much? At what point did he have to just accept that being aggressive was the way to go? Fine, keep going, but I'm sending another unit of my firecracker flowers after you, Matt said. Very well, my lord. Funny how Braskar sounded so happy to have nearly been killed. Still, the matter was resolved. If the Harpies were as weak as mentioned, this might be an easy battle. Of course, that was before the next problem cropped up later that evening. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 8. Day 70, middle of day. Pooled gold, 11.25, plus 42.75 gold per day. Total units, 7 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown, none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower en route from town number 1, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal, 1 firecracker flower en route from town number 2. Army number 2, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 sakal. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse, 0 of 20. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith, Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Greenery. Chapter 9. It came, of course, from the east. Matt had not noticed the issue until he checked in later that night, only to stare down at the new hex blinking at him. He leaned forwards, poking at the details, and watched as information on a third village popped up. They were tiny pennants on the graphic of the village, not the gray-brown of what Matt had labeled as neutral, but a dark brown with a slash of red in between. What do you think? Matt said softly. This the source of the attacks? Looks like it, Irvine said, arms crossed. He leaned forward, as though getting closer would provide more information. Those cavalry units seem to be the same. They are, Matt said, gesturing to call up the unit information. Type Raider Unit, Tier Lesser Tier 1, Number 12, Movement 2. Melee attack, high/very low. Melee defense, low. Ranged attack, none. Ranged defense, low. Hit points, low. Speed, high. Special abilities, charge, unknown. Vulnerabilities, unknown. The fact that they have militia units to back them up isn't great, though, Matt said. Militias are no concern, Braskar rumbled. Not the ones you fought, but these guys are upgraded. Type Militia Unit 2, Tier Lesser Unit 2. Number 8, Movement 1. Melee attack low, melee defense low, ranged attack very low, range defense low, hit points low, speed medium, special abilities unknown, vulnerabilities unknown. They have a ranged attack? Raskar said, surprised. Yes, I'd guess crude bows or slings of some form. Maybe a mix even, Matt offered. Wasn't as though he could tell, not from the information given to him. Nothing too worrisome. Except there's 2 of those units and 2 raiders, Irvine said. Doesn't seem like a fight worth taking on. We could still win, Matt said slowly. I can't believe our units, upgraded and more numerous, couldn't beat them. Agreed, Raskar rumbled. 5 units against 4 should not even be an argument. Even if they have a lousy post-fence defense helping them, Matt said. He was kind of jealous of that, actually. Stakes driven into the ground covering the entrance were not the most innovative defensive encirclement, but since they were all tied together by poles, it did require his units to either jump them or hack them down. Either that or be funneled into a kill zone. Better than his own makeshift attempts, at least, though he might look into making some of these himself. So what's the problem? Irvine said. No problem, I guess. Matt shook his head. But why did this village improve and upgrade, but not village number 2? Did we just hit this one too late? That doesn't seem right. The raiders have always been there. Perhaps the raiders were destroyed by our enemy, Raskar offered, and we just missed them. Perhaps. Now Matt felt bad for not checking the militia unit that Raskar had fought. They'd rolled over them so easily that he hadn't gone into the details. Or maybe this one was always designated as a little tougher? It's possible, Irvine shrugged. The ways of this world are strange and different after all. Raskar rumbled his agreement, and Matt sighed. Truth. So we hit it tomorrow, grab another village, and then what, keep sending more units north? That seems the most prudent option, my lord. No objections here. If you're done... Irvine glanced out the door, obviously impatient to leave. Matt waved the man away, already making notes about other options so he could think them over again. This seemed like the right choice to make. So, why did he feel so worried? No surprise that Matt spent the whole of the next day wandering back and forth inside the tactics room, map room. He still hadn't chosen a term for it, though control room seemed apt. Even so, the one thing the room at the top of his keep had was a lack of entertainment. Once again, Matt found himself longing for the mind-numbing balm of app games, clicking his way through hours of spirit-destroying existence. Though such luxuries might waste one's life away, it was perfect for times like this when distraction was all too desired. It was after a dismal lunch, one where the meal tasted like cardboard, that the army finally clashed with the village. Matt could only watch the flashes on his board, reading the obtuse information that trickled in as Woodling and Firecracker Flowers unit member dies. He could have taken action, used one of the spells that were his only method of interacting with the battle, but each use put him on a lengthy cooldown. If his concerns about attacks on Braskar held out, it could very well be that the orc would need his aid soon enough. Though even that was limited. He could heal the warlord, but the damn lightning bolt technique was constrained by the distance between himself, or the towns he owned, he was yet to ascertain that, and the heroes. Nothing to do but watch, which is just, Matt sighed. It was a lot easier when the damn sprites were just sprites and not actual units, and the biggest penalty was that I had to reload a saved game. No answer, because, of course there wouldn't be. More unit members fell. Then, as suddenly as it began, a new notification appeared. Battle report. Army number 2 versus Village Militia. Result, victory. 0 units lost, 4 units defeated. Rewards, +6 gold, +1 reputation, control of village number 3. Matt automatically flicked away the request for him to name the village. There wasn't much new in the conquest of the village, though there was something interesting when he brought up the new build options. He had to admit, he was curious. Road, 10 by plus 0.25 gold by increased movement speed by 50%. Watchtower, 15 by plus 1 hex view. Horse farm, 50 by access to new building upgrades. Damn. Horse farm it is, Matt muttered. That was an easy option to purchase, what with the potential for cavalry. How cavalry and his wood elemental build would work together, though, Matt had no idea, but he was looking forward to finding out. If it actually worked. On the other hand, and a road too, I think, Matt muttered to himself. His town was a little weak right now, but again, the concerns were only if they managed to punch through his army, so better to spend money linking it up and reduce the amount of time he needed for reinforcements than worry about potential new enemies. He'd also start a new woodling when he had the money tomorrow, just to bolster his army, that or send it off to the new village. He'd see. Just depended on what the enemy chose. The enemy he had yet to find. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 9. Day 71. End of day. Pooled gold, 0. Plus 43.75 gold per day. Total units, 7 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, en route from town number 1, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal, 1 firecracker flower, en route from town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 sakal. Town number 1 status report. In production. Basic greenhouse, 1 of 20. Village number 3, horse farm, 0 of 7. Road to village number 3, 0 of 3. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith, Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Greenery. Chapter 10. Braskar, why exactly are you heading further north without more backup? Matt asked crossly. At first he thought the orc had just been moving around, checking nearby. That had covered the first day, even 2. 3 days later, it was quite clear that the orc had no intention to slow his search for their new enemy. It will take too long for reinforcements to arrive, Braskar said firmly. We have roads built, Matt said. It'll take half the time to get there. Still at a minimum another 6 days, depending on where I am. Braskar shook his head. And sakal, if you even sent some, would be useless. We need ranged fighters. I can buy those. I'm planning on buying those, Matt protested. It wasn't hardly the reason he hadn't bothered making more sakal right now, instead reserving the gold for the ranged sakal units when he had enough. Of course, it would take 200 gold to do that, so at best he had another 4 days before it was possible. He did consider picking up more gold-producing buildings, but the need for troops that could deal with the harpies and were closer to the vector of attacks was causing him to reconsider that. A 4 or 5 day difference in a troop being created could mean all the difference. It was why adding ranged units to town number 2 had suddenly become important. Troop logistics. Who knew it would be so important? I understand, my lord. But in the meantime, our enemies have a chance to regroup. The last attack was plain enough, Braskar said. I believe the enemy is low on combatants, too. Because you had 2 scouts attack you instead of, 5, Matt said. You know they might just be luring you in, and you lost a lot more units that time. 2 firecracker flower saplings and a sakal pup is not that significant. Saplings? Pup? I felt it was better to designate some terminology to individual units. Made sense, of course. Didn't make Matt any less upset. You don't have any backup either in terms of potions. Understood. If I believe we are in danger, I will retreat, but pushing ahead is my recommendation, my lord. Matt pursed his lips and looked over to Irvine, who had been quiet thus far. What do you think, man? That I have nothing useful to add to such discussions, Irvine said. Push or don't. The orc is always going to charge. You must make the decision. And what do you think? I think you have been forgetting your other options, Irvine said. I've looked over all the build and unit options repeatedly. Matt crossed his arms. We just don't have that many choices with the gold we have. I was not speaking of units or buildings. Then, Matt trailed off, realizing what Irvine was speaking of. The hero. The priest. Matt hesitated, considering. There was a lot to be said about getting a priest. For one thing, their ability to heal units would be a significant advantage. So why did he hesitate? Memories of calling death from the sky, of screams and a flash of light, the roar of thunder, a body smoking in the distance, a body that had been alive and living and moving a short moment ago, his first true kill. His first. My lord, Raskar's voice rumbled, bringing Matt back to the present. He blinked, realizing that Irvine was looking at him, face filled with concern and compassion. It won't be the same person, Irvine said softly. They won't even be here. I know that, Matt said firmly, or tried to, but his voice came out weak. He hated how he sounded, but guilt clutched at him, reminding him of what he had done. Killing someone should not have been that easy, should not have been so simple. There should have been something more, some payment, some effort. It should have been harder. Then again, he had died once before. Perhaps there wasn't a hell to send him to anymore because he was there already. If this was hell, it was a little tacky. You're right. We could use a healer. Priest. Matt shook his head. I'll look at it later. It is not necessarily the best option, Raskar added. More ranged units close by would also be advantageous, my lord. In the future, yes. Not as much as a priest healing you immediately, I think. Matt hesitated, trying to run the scenarios through his mind. He couldn't get the math to come up right. I think I'll try to game out the scenarios and math a bit, maybe. Do not forget levels, Irvine said, smirking. As we get more experience, we can do more. Oh? Grabbing at any distraction, Matt focused on Irvine. You have something to say? A new level? Not yet, but close. Irvine reached into his jacket and pulled out a potion, pushing the purple liquid towards Matt. I have, however, a new potion. Oh! Matt grabbed at it, holding the potion up and watching the information flash upwards. Item: Potion of Greater Strength. Use: +5 melee attack. Oh, very nice, Matt said. What is? Braskar grumbled, not being able to see anything, of course. Matt let Irvine crow about his success, a factor that made the orc add, I am nearing my own level increase, my lord. A few more battles, and I too shall be stronger. Balanced accounts. Then Matt frowned. Is that why you're pushing so hard? It is not. Raskar sounded offended. There are good reasons for my decisions. There was a slight hesitation before he added, though more levels are not a consideration. I see. It's for the overall good, my lord. Which is why a priest earlier rather than later is important, boy. Irvine leaned in. I'd bet that heroes will be what makes the difference in our battles in the future. More than units? Irvine crossed his arms. If not, why even have us? You could fight all this with just your units. They added us for a reason. Could be they just like resurrecting and torturing us. Matt cocked his head to the side. You know, we still don't know why you two, or why your histories are so different. Unfortunately, both heroes admitted to no further knowledge on that matter. Matt was, he admitted privately to himself, beginning to suspect some degree of mental manipulation by the gods who'd recreated them. But even if he suspected that, what could he do? Not a whole lot from the way he saw it, other than what he was doing now, which was trying to win the game. And that meant? Fine. Take your risk, Braskar, but be smart. Don't push too far ahead of the priest and my reinforcement. But if you think you can take out more of those harpies or find their keep, so be it. Thank you, my lord. And you, a finger rose and pointed at Irvine, crank out some more of those potions. We're going to need them, and whatever level up you get. Don't tell me how to distill potions, boy. I know. Matt snorted, then leaned back, staring at the tactical map that hovered before him. Now let's just hope that nothing else shows up in the meantime. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 10. Day 74, start of day. Pooled gold, 111.25 plus 43.75 gold per day. Total units, 7 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown, none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal, 1 firecracker flower, en route from town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 sakal. Town 1 status report. In production. Basic greenhouse, 4 of 20. Village number 3, horse farm, 3 of 7. Woodling, 2 of 4. Structures completed. Grove, road, stall 2, ranged copse, harbor, village number 2, watchtower, blacksmith, fishing dock, road to village number 3, 3 of 3. Structures available. Grove 2, watchtower, tavern, marketplace, ranged copse 2, stone harbor, shipyard, trading post, temple, blacksmith upgrade, fishing wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, tavern, wall, temple, stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, javelin range, training house, watchtower, blacksmith, temple 2, granary. Chapter 11. The last thing a general ever wants is to fight a 2-front war. Well, except maybe a 4-front war. But since Matt was facing only 2, he was going to accept that what he had was just really bad luck overall, which, considering he was killed by aliens when he foolishly accepted a pronouncement in his head during an existential crisis, was just about the right speed. Knowing he was unlucky did nothing for the unappealing fact that an army had shown up the next morning, right on the edge of village number 3's vision, which was 2 hexes away from it. At least Matt wasn't mentally complaining about the lack of coffee anymore. The shot of adrenaline that he'd received when he'd seen the army after wandering in this morning had substituted just fine. Just fine. Enemy army sighted. Quantity, 3 units. Any idea why we can see unit quantities now when we couldn't before? Matt muttered, quietly hoping that Braskar or Irvine would know. The watchtower? Irvine offered. The keep upgrade, Braskar said. Yeah, those are my 2 guesses too, Matt said. Unfortunately, no way to tell which one it was at this time. What I'd do to be able to RTFM. I'd never complain about reading a manual again. Manual, my lord. A book of instructions. Ponderous and slow. And prone to errors, Irvine said, shaking his head. You cannot believe the number of mistakes I find, and even supposedly well-written alchemy texts. Not that kind of manual, Matt said, then paused. Though you're both not wrong. The enemy, my lord. I know. But I'm not sure there's much we can do. Matt waved his hand at the table. We could try to meet them, but we can only move a single hex. If they chose to meet us, great. If they're fast-moving like the Sakal, they could choose to avoid us. If they're smart, they might even try to lure us away from the village." "For what reason, my lord?" Raskar asked. "The villages only provide a small increase in gold, though the increased view is useful. There's that. But I've also been wondering—" Matt shook his head. "Tangent. The question is, what can I do?" Raskar fell silent while Irvine poked at the images. He was trying to get more details from the map, but unfortunately neither the notification nor the map provided further details. Matt could have told him that, but figured the alchemist needed something to do while the warlord was thinking. "I think your instincts are right, my lord. Wait to see how they act. If they try to bypass the village, you will at least know that and can act against them. With the new road, you can return your army to the town first." "Unless they're super fast like a speeding bullet." "My lord." Matt sighed but left it. "Watchtower, you think?" "In the new village to expand our coverage." When Matt confirmed, the orc rumbled his agreement. Watchtowers were not very expensive, but did set their builds back. Still, at their low cost, the additional view they offered, even if they lost the village shortly after, was worth the trade-off. At the least, they'd be able to tell if the army was moving closer. "How about the other village, the first one?" Irvine asked, curious. "No point." Matt gestured to the map. "With one more from the watchtower, that puts village number 3's base surveillance to a 3 hexi radius. With the 2 village number 1 gets, we've got the entire area covered." "And from the west?" "Nothing's come from that way." Matt reached forward and rapped the table, just for luck. "Yet," Irvine said. Again he struck the table. "Don't put up any more flags, will you?" "What do you mean, boy?" "Remind me to explain it later," Matt said, dismissing Irvine's question. "What do we do if they decide to avoid us entirely?" "Do, my lord?" "I'm trying to count hexes, see if we can get back in time. Annoying that roads work for both sides." Matt really did wish that the system made roads one way. It'd make life simpler. "I see." Matt grunted, ignoring the comment. They were 3 days' movement from his own fort. However, to make use of his own roads, they'd have to join them, which, depending on how fast the other army was, might mean he couldn't catch them from behind. The issue was more what they would do now and how effectively they might pin his forces down if he was intent on keeping the village in his control. If he left his army inside till he had enough to bolster the defenses, he would be stuck once more. Just as importantly, he only had 4 or 5 days left before the army arrived, maybe less depending on how fast these new opponents could move. That meant that he'd need to consider what he could build. Sakal and firecracker flowers were 5 days each, which meant that in the worst case, they might be too late. On the other hand, if he waited, he would have enough for a hero in 2 days. And, of course, the most important question, where the heck was the new enemy keep? "If that is all," Irvine spoke up, breaking Matt's contemplations, "I'll get back to making potions." "Yeah, you do that. And I'll—" Matt frowned. "Watch the map and work out if there's anything else we can do," Irvine said. "I guess." Matt let out a huff. He wished he could do more, but digging was right out, or mostly out. He could maybe do about half an hour of that before his side ached so badly he had to lie down and wait for the agony to fade. As for making crossbows, well, unless he could figure out how to get the blacksmith, who refused to interact with him, to actually provide real metal and not steal scraps, the crossbows he had were the best he could do. Now, he might, if he got particularly inventive, manage to home alone a bunch of them together to make additional traps, but contrary to movie expectations, such things were rather difficult to set up properly, and just as prone to hurt the trapper as the trappee. Frankly, he'd be better off just building a giant hammer to smash into someone's face when they opened a door than to crank a crossbow, leave it loaded, and tie the trigger to an elaborate rope pulley system. In fact, "Boy, what are you thinking and smiling so evilly for?" Irvine said, bushy eyebrows drawn low. "Nothing." "Nothing at all." Matt grinned. "Uh-huh. So long as it's no more of those crossbows or random traps. Remember, the servants aren't going to remember to step strangely just because you want them to. You're just lucky they don't clean up your scraps. Fine, fine. Matt threw his hands up and then winced as the wound in his chest tugged tight. He lowered them again. He ignored the concerned looks the alchemist gave him as he nursed his side. I'll go do something else. Maybe build more movable obstacles or something. You do that. And keep thinking of what we can do, eh? Irvine said. Yes, sir. Matt even threw a mocking salute as he watched the alchemist disappear. He stared at the information for a moment longer, running the math. Just about enough. Quick flicker of his fingers, and he added a firecracker flower to the queue. Then he turned away to head for the stairs. One way or another, he was going to find a way to be useful. Global status report at the end of Chapter 11. Day 75, end of day. Pooled gold, 115.25 plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 7 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown, none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal, 1 firecracker flower en route from town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 sakal. Town number 1, status report. In production, basic greenhouse, 5 of 20. Village number 3 horse farm, 4 of 7. Woodling, 3 of 4. Village number 3 watchtower, 0 of 1. Firecracker flower, 0 of 5. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock, Road to Village number 3. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary. Chapter 12. They're pinning us, Matt groused the very next day. The moment the watchtower had appeared, Matt had been able to tell more details about the units that had appeared at the edge of his map. That had been the only good news of the day. Enemy army sighted. Quantity, 3 cavalry raiders. Through the rest of the morning, he had watched with bated breath for the enemy to move. When half the day had come and gone, and the units had just stayed in the same spot, he knew for sure that they had chosen not to shift locations. 2 hexes away from his village. Just far enough that Matt could not move his own units to meet them, not without them leading him on a wild goose chase. Too close for him to leave the village at all, because then they'd take it. As it stood, if he tried to even chase them down, they had the option of reinforcing with more units from another direction. If he had Sakal, he might have stood a chance, but his wood elemental army was just too slow. What do you think? Should I split my army? Matt asked Braskar. The orc was quite a distance away now, nearly half again the size of his original map and 7 days away from the second town, right next to a large lake. If not for the lake, Matt assumed the orc would have explored even further, going back and forth as he had, slowly revealing more and more of the land. Thus far, though, he'd yet to encounter another raiding party. Maybe the orc had been right that their enemies had only a few units. That seemed strange to Matt, considering the sheer number of units he had acquired himself. Spread out, he had to admit, but his harpy enemies should have more. That sense of incongruity was why he wanted Braskar to hold off. If he kept pushing ahead and they launched an attack, there was nothing Matt would be able to do, especially since Braskar couldn't run very well. You could, my lord, but it would not be recommended, Braskar said. We know not the strength of those cavalry units. If they are significantly upgraded, they could win against the smaller part of your army, perhaps even the bigger. If they're upgraded, Matt pointed out. Yes. Staring at the stone roof and wooden buttresses, Matt worried his lip before looking down. He had a way of checking, one that the opponents could not stop, but it would mean he'd lose the unit, something he preferred not to happen. On the other hand, knowing the strength of his enemy might well be worth it. "What if I let out one of my units as bait?" Matt said. "The Sakal or a Woodling would work if they chose to attack." "To ascertain the strength of their army?" Raskar hesitated. "Certainly a viable option, though you will lose the unit, and we've stopped producing Sakal already." "For the priest, yes," Matt sighed. "I still don't see a way around it. If this army is significantly upgraded, it'll be necessary to reinforce our army. I already have the Woodling that I just made on its way, but that's not enough, especially if we need to reinforce." "It is a risk, I agree." Raskar fell silent, and Matt waited for his analysis. "Use the Sakal." "Why?" "We know units can retreat. If we can have them engage and then retreat—" "That's assuming I can give the command to the Sakal in time," Matt replied. "That assumes I can even get the information in time before the battle is over." "True, my lord. But I have faith in you." Matt grunted. But after a moment's further thought, he triggered the Sakal to move forward the next day. If he did this right, he'd force a battle with the hostile army. "About your reinforcements," Matt said once that was done. "Yes, my lord." "You should get the second firecracker flower in the next few days. I'm debating how to move the second hero. Assuming they're already present and come out immediately, I can either strip the town further or send them alone. Thoughts?" "Reinforcements would be good." "Agreed, but I don't have anyone. So I best get to building more firecracker flowers. Maybe turn the second one back and have them meet in the middle?" "A wise decision." It amused Matt that they were smart enough to be given a simple order like join with the First Army, while at other times the system seemed incredibly dumb. He'd have to forcefully group the hero and the unit, but he debated pulling even more units from the second town. He'd have to decide tomorrow how much he was willing to risk things. Fighting a two-front war sucked. Raskar sighed, staring at the lapping waters of the lake. He thought, if he squinted hard enough, he could see the other side of the watery impediment. It was not a massive lake, unlike the other one he'd once found. This one ran north to south, forcing him to skirt sideways. He decided to follow it northward to see where these harpies might be coming from. All indication was that they'd come from north of him somewhere. At first, he'd thought northeast, but now he assumed it was just north. Unless the opponent was purposely throwing him off by sending the scouts north first, before breaking east or west or even around. Frustrating that he didn't have a better method of watching for enemy units. Perhaps another hero might have some ability to do so, but for him he was locked to only seeing a single hex away from his unit. It was another reason he wanted the Harpy Town. If they could conquer that, not only would they gain a significant advantage in gold production, but they'd also finally have aerial scouts. The warlord in him salivated at the thought. The Sakal were good, but too fragile, too easily destroyed, much like those cavalry raiders down south. Raskar wondered what kind of unit mix his lord might face. If the land to the east was mostly plains, then cavalry and other mounted units would be very dangerous. Assuming they had a proper general or warlord in charge, his lord might not even be able to force a fight. Perhaps he should suggest upgrading their firecracker flowers, or even acquiring the long-range version of their units. Doing so, of course, meant that they wouldn't be able to acquire the Sakal's equivalent of a long-range team. What they might be, he did not know. Perhaps it was something he should push to his lord to review. However, such action was potentially dangerous. He had noticed that his lord had a tendency to get distracted all too easily by a new building or unit. Whatever interested him at the time was what he often chose to focus upon, which made him highly adaptable on one hand. Unfortunately, that also left him and Irvine scrambling at times to keep track of what his lord was thinking of next. And, worst of all, it meant that previously good plans and strategies were discarded in lieu of the next bright idea. Like his initial plan for a lot of small units, his Zerg rush, that had now become building out lots of gold-producing areas and a hero. Of course, Braskar understood that gold producers were required, but somehow it seemed that his lord should have been more focused. He thought for a moment longer before reaching out to his lord again. "My lord." "Braskar?" Matt answered immediately. "What's up?" "I wonder, could the numbers we see of the harpies in the cavalry, is it because they are more expensive?" Silence from the other end. Braskar waited patiently as he walked along the lakeside with his army. He kept half an eye on the water, the other half on the skies. The Sakal were also closer to his main units now, rather than raging far out front. "Makes sense," Matt said slowly. "I don't think there's a way to tell, but it's possible that the Harpy Scouts are the cheapest units, and still probably expensive." Drumming noise, presumably from fingers playing on a wooden table, came across the link. "If that's the case, expect their actual units to hit harder. Stronger, but more expensive and faster." Braskar frowned. This seems like an unfair advantage when one includes their ability to fly. "Yeah, maybe not all those things, except the expensive. They might be slower and more heavily armored or something. I'm imagining armored harpies, which is..." Matt trailed off. "Well, kinda cool. I wish I could see that." "I'm sure you will, my lord. So long as they're on my side." Softer, quieter, he repeated the sentence. Braskar ignored the whispered words. It was likely his lord did not expect him to hear them, nor would he shame the young warrior in that manner. Fear of death was nothing to be shameful of, though many young warriors refused to take the wisdom of their elders. They would learn soon enough. Even the mightiest warrior cried. Even the greatest died. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 12. Day 76. Start of day. Pooled gold, 159.25, plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 Sakal. Cooldown none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 Sakal, 1 firecracker flower en route from town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 Sakal, 1 woodling en route from town number 1. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse 6 of 20. Village number 3, horse farm 5 of 7. Firecracker flower 1 of 5. Structures completed. Grove Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock, Road to Village number 3, Watchtower. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith, Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary. Chapter 13. It was early morning the next day, and Matt was up at the tactics room, eager to see what had transpired overnight. He knew, of course, but he still scanned the map for any additional problems. Not that he expected them, not immediately. If someone was moving in, unless he'd missed it late at night, they'd only appear midday at best on the map. No, that wasn't the reason he was up early. What he was looking forward to was buying the priest, hiring them. Initial fear was washed over with the anticipation of a dopamine hit from going shopping. A quick check on the tavern had him pause for a moment before he remembered that that was not where he picked up priests. Still, now that he had the notification open, he paused to look it over just in case he had more slots. No such luck. Name, tavern, building type, hero managements, tier, lesser tier 1, heroes available to recruit, warrior, ranger. Number of available hero slots, 1. Though the available heroes had him blinking. Huh. They changed. Matt stared at the pair of options. The warrior was quite clear. They had already run into one before. Individually stronger than the warlord, but without the unit control that warlords were able to provide. Weighing the two, Matt preferred a warlord like Braskar over a plain warrior. Perhaps when he had more hero slots, but he needed generals, not soldiers, right now. That was probably the same problem with the ranger. If they were at all like the Dungeons and Dragons class or even Sir Tolkien's work, individually they were strong but mostly as scouting units, not particularly useful in this case. Though if I get Aragorn, I bet I could make him glower at the female heroes and they'd be all, "Oh, Aragorn, please ravage me with your stringy, unwashed hair and manly scruff." Perhaps Matt had issues with the character after a particularly bad college relationship when his ex had complained about his lack of facial hair and had compared him to said ranger. Like, how was he supposed to compete against an imaginary and perfect king? Well, in that case, the answer had been not at all. Yeah, no ranger for him, for a lot of reasons. Priest, time to grab a priest, Matt said softly to himself. A flicker of his fingers, and the temple was called up. No changes there, so confirming the purchase was quick. 200 gold disappeared out of his treasury in moments, and a new notification came up. The first of its kind in a while. Lacia, Level 1 Acolyte. Specialty, Theology. Skills, Aura of Inspiration, Minor Healing. Experience 0 of 100. Attack 9, Defense 7, Power 14, Knowledge 19. Damn, those are good stats, Matt said, eyeing the numbers. Though the skills are different? Didn't the other one have things like curses and healing? No answer. He could poke at Irvine to get an answer. The man had a better memory than him. But it didn't matter. After all, he had something more important to do, especially as he eyed the portrait that came with all the information. The priest, who was a female it seemed, was cute in the stern, soil-muddled way of her skin and dark hair. Lacia? Sir? Her voice was silky smooth, a lilt to it that suited her skin. He'd call her Indian or Pakistani or something from that portion of Earth, but if things carried out... How are you doing? How did you know to appear on my map? Appear, sir? She sounded puzzled now. I was in the temple, serving the... She trailed off, confused. No, I was on the field, tending to the sick during the battle, and then... You can remember your past? Matt said, surprised. Your death? Yes, no. She struggled for a moment, her voice pained. I remember the field, but not my end. I remember the line breaking, the men charging, and that was it. No more. I see. And your arrival? I just remember being in the temple. That time, it's hazy. Like I wasn't really there. Just drifting through my days. Matt gulped, leaning back. He stared at the door where a servant came by every once in a while. How they drifted through the keep, taking care of the basic tasks, feeding, chopping wood, cleaning. He could not help but wonder if each of those servants was just like Lacia. How many of them were just drifting until called upon? Some of them? All of them? Were the militias that were being sent out to fight his own units, were his own units made up of real individuals too? Not just called upon, not real, because they were not needed yet? Sir? Matt blinked, shaking out of his contemplations. I'm sorry, what? Did you have orders for me, sir? Lacia said. Why did you call me? Matt shook his head, pushing his thoughts aside. He could not say how many of those here were heroes to be. He believed, had to believe for his sanity, that not all of them were like that, that most were just mindless automata. And if that was a lie, he was still going to believe it, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to function. That was the human condition, wasn't it? Lying to oneself to function? I'll send the orders through the map, but I want you to meet up with one of my other heroes, Braskar. Matt hesitated, then added, He's an orc. A what? Lacia said. Orc, brown-skinned, tusks, big fella, my warlord. Matt exhaled. Just wanted to warn you. I see. A demon, but on our side? I wouldn't call him that. Of course, sir. We've got a harpy problem. Flying units, raiders so far, but we're worried there might be more. We want you to link up, find the fort or keep or whatever they're using, and take it, Matt said. I can do that, sir, Lacia said. Do I leave now? In a second. You should meet your fellow heroes. Of course, sir. I look forward to it. Somehow, Matt actually believed that she did. Disoriented or not, there was a gentleness and kindness to her voice. Or perhaps he was just hoping for it. After all, she was the first female he'd met here who wasn't trying to kill him. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 13. Day 77, end of day. Pooled gold, 3.25, plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown, none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling, Lacia. Army 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal, 1 firecracker flower en route from town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 sakal, 1 woodling en route from town number 1. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse, 7 of 20. Village number 3 horse farm, 6 of 7. Firecracker flower, 2 of 5. Structures completed. Grove Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock, Road to Village number 3 Watchtower. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary. Chapter 14. Mid-afternoon the next day, he was upstairs, biting his lip. He was wondering what would happen when the Sakal met the enemy units. It also might answer some questions on how this world worked, at least in terms of non-hero-controlled units. For example, he had given orders for the Sakal from village number 3 to exit and charge his opponents the night before. That meant that in the morning they had exited the village and moved to the first hex throughout the first hours of the day. They were loping well ahead. Now, the question was, did his opponent have to set up their orders beforehand? Were they watching his units so that they could, in the middle of the morning when it was clear that the Sakal were coming out, back their own units off? Or did he have to do it the day before or at the start of the day? Exactly when could they get this information and when could they make use of it? Obviously, the answer only came if they actually took action. If they stood there and accepted the Sakal's charge, he'd have no new information. He didn't know if they could make decisions on the fly, could only do so when someone was watching, and no one was, or could only do so when a hero was present. Impossible to prove a negative, which was aggravating. Of course, he knew what he could do theoretically. He'd seen the option to alter the choices for the Sakal midday, which was why he always tried to get up here just before noon so that he could make adjustments if necessary. Then again, it wasn't as important for him. He only had one unit type that could move 2 hexes a turn. His opponent, on the other hand, seemed entirely made up of cavalry, which meant they should, if they were forced to deal with the same constraints, be up in their tower. Assuming they were constrained in the same way. Too many damn questions, no manual. Pretty much the human existence, really, though when there were meant to be random and arbitrary rules, there should at least be a manual. It was ever more aggravating without one. All of which meant that Matt could only watch, leaning against the table, drumstick for lunch in hand, and wait. It didn't take that long for the time to pass. The Sakal appeared on the other side of the hex, and his opponents disappeared from the next, at the same time. "So we're playing Ring Around the Rosie, are we? Or is it chairs?" Matt muttered. It was good news. He had learned something new. Specifically, he learned that his opponent either could set up more complex commands for units to keep them away without a hero to intervene, or was like him, coming up to check on their units regularly. He leaned towards the second, really. He'd already seen how unresponsive enemy units were when there were no heroes in play, and only marginally better when those heroes weren't warlords or commander units of some form. No reason to believe it would be any different for the enemy. If the gods and their enemies were making them play that slanted a game, he would have hoped they let it be known beforehand. "So, guys," Matt spoke up, calling the hero's interface upwards. He filled them in quickly, answered the few questions there were, jumped when Lacia spoke up, and he remembered she was part of the team, and then dismissed them all. The question was, what to do next turn? Other than inputting tomorrow's movement to chase after the unit, he wondered if they were going to be rushing around the village. If so, did it mean he was stuck and pinned still anyway? If both armies had the same movement rate, it certainly seemed that way. Matt sighed after a moment, putting his feet up on the desk. Time to do some math again and figure out what to do. He wasn't going to make a decision yet, though, what with the new build coming up tomorrow. And his lack of gold, of course. Chapter 15. Matt was up early the next day since he was looking forward to the completion of the horse farm. Lacia was on her way to meet with the firecracker Flower and Braskar, eventually, while he had started another woodling yesterday. Right now, he intended to continue building up a gold reserve, if for no other reason than to get more gold-producing buildings. Still, that was not the excitement. Today was horse farm day. It still seemed strange to him that he'd have horses for his wood elementals, but what did he know? The entire killing people and resurrecting thing was also strange, but it worked. First things first, though. He dumped his funds into a firecracker Flower in his own fortress to get them going. Then, and only then, did he take a look at the information that came up on the horse farm. Name, horse farm. Building type, unit upgrades. Tier, lesser tier 0. Benefits, allows creation of cavalry units. Kind of on the nose name, isn't it? Matt muttered, staring at the name. Ah, well, no one was winning awards for naming here. He still only used numbers for his villages and towns. He pulled up his original town and found the new addition easily. Structure available. Brisk nursery. Building type, barracks. Tier, lesser tier 1. Units available to produce. Walking palm trees. Tumbleweed riders. Dandelion troopers. Cost 300 gold. Production time 8 days. Well, that's interesting. Matt stared at the options once more and flicked his hand sideways. He knew Irvine probably would not care, and a quick check confirmed it. On the other hand, Braskar, got a moment? I do, my lord. Got the horse farm built, and now I've got the option to build a brisk nursery. 3 units available, just like with the ranged cops, but this time they're a little weird, Matt said. Tell me, I will listen. Matt heard some shifting around, a loud grunt, and then silence. He could not help but wonder what that was all about, but he was much more excited about the idea of checking out the available units. Unit name, Walking Palm Trees. Type, Wood Elemental, Tier, Lesser Tier 1, Number 6, Movement 1. Cost, 50 gold. Melee attack, 15. Melee defense, 18. Ranged attack, 0. Ranged defense, 20. Hit points, 12. Speed, 10. Special abilities, Armored Charge. Vulnerabilities, none. Growth potential, low. Damn, that attack and defense, Matt said after he finished reading it. The palm trees were weird, with long trunks and multiple roots that lifted them off the ground, making them look like vertical centipedes. They even had a layered, almost scale mail-like bark. Multiple arm limbs, too, all the better for beating. This feels and looks like they're the Wood Elemental's heavy cavalry equivalent. Not much movement, but decent speed, and they've got a charge ability. Heavy cavalry, armored knights, or in this case, hardened trees that can break a set line. Powerful, not particularly maneuverable, Braskar said. We got the sock off for that, don't we? In a sense. The Sakal are what I would consider light cavalry for their armor, medium cavalry in their ability to break lines due to their lack of fear. We should continue before making decisions. I know, Matt grumbled, but he did pull up the next unit. Unit name, Tumbleweed Riders. Type Wood Elemental, Tier Lesser Tier 1, Number 8, Movement 2, Cost 50 gold, Melee Attack 10, Melee Defense 8, Ranged Attack 2, Ranged Defense 12, Hit Points 12, Speed 12, Special Abilities, Charge, Expansion, Vulnerabilities, Fire, Medium, Growth Potential, Medium. The Tumbleweed Riders were the most alien-looking of the group. The walking palm trees were trees with glowing eyes and moving bodies, but in the end they were just trees. This, though, was just weird. The tiny glowing illustration of the Tumbleweed Riders sat before Matt, making him shudder a little. Tumbleweed Riders were as though someone had bulked out your average tumbleweed, added a solid core in the center of dense branches, and then made sure to add some glowing, burning eyes within. Weird and creepy, what with the green-brown, almost dead portions of its outer body. Very high hit points, Braskar rumbled. And this ability of expansion, I do not know what it does. Matt hummed, trying to remember what he knew of the plant from his homeworld. All he could recall were bad movie references, where the hero and villain stood across from one another till someone flinched. Not particularly useful, really. I got nothing. Low defense, I guess because it's mostly dead? Matt said slowly. It's dead? Yeah, mostly. The outside of the tumbleweeds, the part that, tumbles, it's all dead material, dried branches and the like, when it pulls apart. I guess in this case it's not entirely dead since they actually need to move, but mostly. So, hard to kill, but easy to damage. Tiny branches. After a little more prompting and Matt's hesitant description of what he saw, Braskar added, The attack seems sufficient for base attacks, but I do not see how it provides any advantage over the Sakal. They are both like cavalry. They have some ranged attack, Matt offered. 2 was weirdly low. Maybe the shards from their bony protrusions could explode outwards or get carried on the wind or something. Negligible amount unless you have a large number. Yeah, you have a point, Matt sighed. It would have been nice, but not knowing what expansion meant, plus the low stats, he couldn't see how the Tumbleweed Riders added to their current army build. No point in having 2 of the same unit type. Even if they were kinda cool looking in the looming over your bed as you wake up from a nightmare way. Last one. Unit name, Dandelion Troopers. Type Wood Elemental, Tier Lesser Tier 1, Number 12, Movement 2, Cost 50 gold, Melee Attack 10, Melee Defense 8, Ranged Attack 0, Ranged Defense 8, Hit Points 8, Speed 14. Special Abilities, On the Wind, Propagation, Vulnerabilities, Fire, Medium, Growth Potential, High. The Dandelion Troopers were walking dandelions. No face, no eyes, just blobs of white on thin stalks that didn't look like they'd be that dangerous. Of course, their melee attack numbers indicated otherwise, which meant he was likely missing something. High growth potential, but the lowest numbers overall, it seems, Braskar said. Not much better than our woodlings, other than greater speed. And numbers of units. Matt frowned. Number of units? Unit numbers? Spores? Number of dandies. He nodded firmly, having chosen what he wanted. Yeah, there's a dozen dandies there. So what if he grinned when he said it, knowing no one else was going to get it? This was a weird hellscape he might as well have fun with. I believe the Dandelion Troopers are unique due to their special abilities, but I do not know this plant, nor do I understand what this white ball of poof, kinda like a cloud stuck on a branch description you have offered, Braskar complained. Do you have insight into this unit, my lord? I actually do know these dandelions, Matt said. I guess I should be grateful they are drawing from earth plants. He shook his head after a moment, dismissing the idea of weird alien wood elementals. And wasn't that a mouthful? Dandelions basically are made up of floating seeds. You blow on that cloud, the puffy white bit, and the seeds float up into the sky, dispersing and propagating that way. Propagating? Braskar questioned. Matt shook his head. clarifying for him. Sometimes he forgot that certain words might not translate well, or that the warlord might not have the education to understand it, no matter what kind of weird magic made it possible for them all to speak English. I see, my lord. So, do you think, then, that the first skill allows them to travel in the air? Looks like it, though how it helps across the battlefield? Matt shrugged. Could be useful, but that also is confusing because propagation is just the same, you know? Different uses for the same ability. I guess, Matt sighed. It doesn't really matter since I can't buy anything. Not yet. True enough, my lord. Will you consider the matter then? Yup, back burner while I try to figure out where else our gold has to go. Matt let out a sigh. For all the excitement of getting some cavalry units, truth was he probably needed to focus on getting more gold first. He'd avoided that for a bit, and if he didn't keep adding to his daily gold production, he would fall behind. Even if this looked all too tempting. Any other news, Braskar? Nothing, my lord. Not as yet. All right, good luck. Lacia's on the way to you. Don't take any risks till then, will you? Then Matt winced. He'd forgotten to talk to her about this entirely. Something to check, since, well, he did want her on the team. Yes, my lord. Content with that, Matt cut the connection and braced himself for another conversation. Maybe he could lie and say that he just wanted to have these conversations individually. Or perhaps, if he was lucky, she just wouldn't ask. Chapter 16. The conversation with Licia had gone as well as could have been expected. She had not had any insights to offer him, so Matt wandered off for breakfast. By the time he came back in the afternoon, little had changed beyond the proximity of his own unit next to the raider units and their continued movement away. With the village in a hex, they were circling at a distance 3 hexes away, going in and out of range of the village, close enough to be a real threat either way. For all that, and all his thoughts about what to buy next with his gold, it had been Irvine who had come upstairs, smelling of acrid chemicals and nutmeg, and noticed the change. What are these running kennels? Irvine said, poking at the map. The what? Eyes wide, Matt prodded at the information. From the name, he knew it had to be in the second town. A quick highlight brought up the information. Quietly, Matt cursed himself for missing this. Apparently, creating and accessing the horses around the third village had opened the options in the second town for a cavalry too. Suddenly, the importance of what Braskar was doing exploded. If the new fort had other villages and resources to access, what else would he be able to build? What new units? For that matter, were there new gold-producing buildings? Structure available. Running kennels. Building type, barracks. Tier, lesser tier 1. Units available to produce. Warg Riders. Sakal Vanguard. Outcasts. Cost 300 gold. Production time 6 days. Well, that's different, Matt found himself muttering. What is? Irvine said. The breakdown. At least one isn't an entirely new type, but an upgrade. Matt raised a hand, cutting Irvine off. Let's do this right, shall we? What? Braskar? Lacia? Matt sent a tendril of thought out, pushing for the two to connect with him. When they finally did, their responses had him smiling a little. My lord? Sir? Irvine found a new building option. Running kennels, Matt said. Faster build time at 6 days, same cost. 3 options again. The horse farm allowed you to build kennels, sir? Licia added belatedly. He didn't blame her at all. The entire system was all kinds of confusing after all. Yes, let me get through the readout, and we can discuss world magic weirdness later, eh? Of course, my lord. Similar choruses of agreement rang out. Unit name, Warg Riders. Type, Beastkin. Tier, lesser tier 1. Number 8, movement 3. Cost 65 gold. Melee attack 12. Melee defense 10. Ranged attack 0. Ranged defense 14. Hit points 8. Speed 16. Special abilities, Mounted Companion. Charge. Vulnerabilities, Sonic, low. Fear, low. Growth potential, medium. Of course, Matt described the unit image that came along with the Warg Riders. He had to smile a little since it reminded him a little of a famous fantasy movie, but was also different, since the Sakal were more animal-like than the orcs. In this case, they looked more like children holding on to their much larger parents, riding body pressed to fur, than actual riders with stirrups and the like. On the other hand, it sounds as though the companions are the wargs, or are the riders the wargs, Braskar hummed. Wargs are the wolf-like creatures, Matt confirmed. The wargs then seem to be an additional unit for combat. It's possible the Sakal, the riders, dismount after a charge and continue the battle with their companions, Braskar said. My people used to do the same, though we used horses, and our horses did not fight unless pressed. Why not? Matt asked curiously. Beasts of burden are expensive to upkeep and raise, especially war-trained ones. Lacey spoke up. The smell of blood, the noise, the screams can unnerve your average beast. If you do not raise them properly, they will flee such situations immediately. Yes, and we needed our animals for a treat later, Braskar added. Better to save them for the future. So basically the wargs are even faster-moving Sakal who can really pack a punch. Probably great for flanking maneuvers or patching a hole in a line, Matt said. But with the way the units move, are they even smart enough to do that? It seems even sillier than normal if they don't allow at least some additional intelligence in their deployment, Irvine said. After all, even the raiders knew better than to walk into your open holes. Open holes? Lisa's voice rose. What kind of holes are they speaking of, sir? Pit traps. Matt rolled his eyes at Irvine, the older man grinning back unapologetically. And you have a point. So probably some basic intelligence, but again, something we'll likely be better able to use with Braskar. And they're fast. Like, much faster than anything else we have. Might be useful for scouting, or chasing down cavalry. Yes, 3 hexes could make quite the difference in our operations, my lord. Unless we get something better with the harpies, Matt said. Also, they're expensive. True, my lord. Moving on. Unit name, Sakal Vanguard. Type Beastkin, Tier Lesser Tier 1, Number 8, Movement 2, Cost 50 gold. Melee attack 16, melee defense 15, ranged attack 0, ranged defense 15, hit points 10, speed 12. Special abilities, Rage, Linebreaker. Vulnerabilities, Sonic, low, Frenzy, medium, growth potential, medium. They look like the big brother version of the Sakal, except, with heavy plate armor and a bunch of axes. Though those claws look nasty enough, I'm not even sure they need the axes, Matt said, staring at the pictures. Those are truly frightening visages, and all of them bear scars. Irvine shuddered. I do believe these are their elite members. Heavy infantry linebreakers, meant to be the front line of any attack. I would not be surprised to see a Sakal Berserker option come up if we continue to upgrade the Sakal barracks, Braskar said musingly. Combined, this would be a fast-moving, heavy-hitting infantry army if they were by themselves. I agree, Lysias said. Their ranged units are likely stone throwers or javelins if the armies are those like we faced before. On my world, that is. She made a small humming noise in her throat as she thought, then added, Powerful, but this is not the same as your plant hands. The palm trees? Yes, sir. Yeah, except faster. Lower defense, though. Matt then nodded. Good point, though. No need to double up on them if we get the palm trees, or vice versa. These rage and linebreaker skills, one builds up, I assume, like our own orc, but what does the second do? No idea, Matt said. A projected attack? A super short-range charge? He shrugged. Won't know till we buy it, or see someone use it on us. Braskar grumbled a little, joined by Irvine, but Matt was already reading the next option. No point in his view to continue complaining. Unit name, Outcasts. Type, Beastkin. Tier, Lesser Tier 1. Number 4, Movement 3. Cost 25 gold. Melee attack 8, melee defense 12. Ranged attack 4, ranged defense 8, hit points 8, speed 16. Special abilities, +1 hex view. Vulnerabilities, Sonic, low, fear, medium. Growth potential, low. Mangy curs, Irvine said. even before Matt could describe the image. Sir? Irvine's right, if not politic. They're ugly, dirty creatures. Very few in number, they look like what they're called. Outcasts, individuals who live on the outskirts of society. Matt hesitated. If anything, I'd be more worried about meeting these guys in an alley than the Vanguard. I'd agree on that. The Vanguard might kick your ass for fun, but these boys will shank you in the ribs for the clothes on your back and the boots on your feet, Irvine said. I vote no. I say yes. These are the scouts we have spoken of requiring before. Even a single unit with an army could make a significant difference. Never mind their ability to range independently of the army. And cheap, too, Lacey said. The cheapest unit by far. Not exactly, Matt said. The upgraded woodlings are only 20 gold still, but the cheapest cavalry unit for sure. Lacey muttered a thanks to him, which Matt waved away. She was still learning, after all. Barely a day birthed in this world, unlike the rest of them, what with their grand old age of nearly 80 days. Babies, all of them, in so many ways. 4 scouts. They'd be killed the moment they encounter anyone, Irvine said. Remember the option to retreat. And see their speed? I think they're meant to be able to retreat at any time, along with the additional hex view. Raskar huffed. These are good units, my lord. I'd agree, except it's going to cost an arm and a leg just to get the kennels, Matt said. And don't forget, we also need the money down south, and for more gold-producing buildings. Raskar fell silent. Eventually, Irvine got fed up and spoke up. You what? Apologies. I shrugged. The Lord is right. I am sure he will make the right decision, but I will say that scouts will make a big difference. More than the dandelion troopers, or hand trees, Lacey said. Depending on what we face, yes. Lacey seemed doubtful, but chose not to speak further. Thanks, guys. I'll let you get back to it, and I'll do some thinking, I guess. Matt sighed. There wasn't anything else he could do anyway. Not now. Not until they knew more of what they faced. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 16. Day 79, end of day. Pooled gold, 71.25 plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 6 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Raskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal. Army number 2, Lacia, 1 firecracker flower, en route. Army number 3, 1 sakal, chasing raiders. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 woodling en route from town number 1. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse, 9 of 20. Firecracker flower, 4 of 5. Woodling, 1 of 4. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock, Road to Village number 3, Village number 3 Watchtower, Village number 3 Horse Farm. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf, Brisk Nursery. Town 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary, Running Kennels. Chapter 17. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, one falls down, we all go around? Matt frowned, then shook his head. No, that's not right. It goes a different way. He drummed his fingers on the table. Something, plague, death, children's game? Or has that been disproved? Idle thoughts. Useless ones. He did not have a lot to do. Not right now. Even if he wanted to get the new units building, he needed 300 gold for either the Brisk Nursery or the Running Kennels. He could rebuild the Ranged Copse and get a squirting cucumber, though how much more range they had, he was uncertain. That cost 200 gold. His other option was purchasing gold producers. Those basically meant the marketplace, the fishing wharf, the harbor, or the trading post, all of which were 200 to 250 gold pieces to build out. That was if he didn't spend a single gold piece for a minimum of 3 days. Of course, he could try to get a few more units, but the only thing he could buy right now was a Sakal. Unfortunately, he saw no point in buying them, not when they offered no major advantage, not when he could purchase actual scouts and faster units soon. Well, soon as in 12 to 15 days, give or take a bit. All of which meant that for the next few days, while he was waiting for his gold to refill, the only thing he really had to do beyond healing slowly was watching the map. After all, the last thing he wanted to happen was for Braskar or Lacia or his Sakal unit to end up in a fight and him not notice. The major question for Matt right now was what to do with the various gold-producing building options available. He knew he needed to buy another gold producer, and there wasn't a huge difference in what was being offered beyond build times, and what they could potentially offer afterwards. On that note, he made sure to pull up the information on the marketplace and trading post. Structure available. Marketplace, building type, treasury, tier, lesser tier 2, benefit plus 10 gold per day, cost 200 gold, production time 12 days. Structure available, trading post, building type trade, tier, lesser tier 2, benefit plus 1 gold per day per connection, cost 250 gold, production time 6 days. The good news was that the marketplace was the cheapest option by far for the amount of additional gold it gave. It made the most sense, except for the huge amount of time required to build it. If he wanted something to boost him immediately, though, the trading post was faster to build than anything else by a full day. The stone harbor was the worst of all options, being slow to build and expensive, as well as producing not much more gold, while the fishing wharf just added to what they had before. A decent middle-of-the-road alternative, but not useful right now. The question was what they did. The trading post obviously made sense in the long term, depending on what connection meant. He assumed it had to do with the roads and maybe the harbor and shipyard. But were villages connections or just other towns? If it was just a town, then he was adding just 1 gold for a 250 gold price. If, on the other hand, it included the villages, he would be standing at +4 right now, and probably a lot more as things built up. The trading post would automatically add to his gold, though right now it just wasn't as good. Except, of course, it would start giving him gold before the marketplace could. So build the trading post first and get gold from it, and then save up to build the marketplace? Matt muttered to himself. Or build the marketplace first and then get the trading post because it takes longer, so we should get started immediately? That assumed he wouldn't need more units, which he was certain he was going to. So, whatever decision he made, it would affect him for the foreseeable future. He might not even get a new gold-producing place for a while if the pace of combat increased. Marketplace, then, I think. More gold now. Except one other factor niggled at him. The building tree. What other new and cool buildings or units would appear if he got either of those places? He figured the trading post and marketplace both added the next level up of their building tier. He might even get out of lesser tier and get to less tier, middle tier, middling. More importantly, though, what random combination would there be? He assumed he needed something like the shipyard before shipbuilding became a thing, but with a harbor and a trading post, was there a cool combination there? Or granary and marketplace, as he'd thought of before? How about the horse farm and marketplace? Would he then be able to build a rodeo? Or, less silly, a coliseum? There were so many options involved. Maybe even the marketplace and trading post might cause things like a merchant guild or a bank to appear. Those were just some options he could see coming along if he knew anything about such games, which Matt liked to think he did a little. In the short term, though, the question was which of the two had the most chance to get an upgrade and what kind. The marketplace had been available the longest, so by that theory, it made him think that it might have the most symbiotic configuration with his current builds. In particular, a fishing dock and marketplace combination might get him something. Also, at some point, he was sure stuff like the granary would be viable, or even a pottery. After all, there seemed to be quite the lack of artisan-based items. Thinking it over, Matt sighed. It made perfect sense to go with the marketplace. That extra 10 gold was going to be a major boon, and if things went well, he'd have a chance to get the trading post soon after. And if not, even if it took longer to come out, he'd have it started rather than waiting for things to play out. No, the marketplace was the way to go. Now he just had to hope that the team didn't run into anything too troublesome before he could buy it. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 17. Day 80, end of day. Pooled gold, 90.25 plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 7 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers. Town number 2, 1 firecracker flower, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Raskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal. Army number 2, Lacia, 1 firecracker flower, en route. Army number 3, 1 sakal, chasing raiders. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 2 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers, 1 woodling en route from town number 1. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse 10 of 20. Firecracker flower 0-5. Woodling 2 of 4. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall number 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock, Road to Village number 3, Village number 3 Watchtower, Village number 3 Horse Farm. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf, Brisk Nursery. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary, Running Kennels. Chapter 18. My lord. Matt hunched his shoulders as he heard the voice. He groaned a little, putting down the hand axe that he'd been utilizing to chop down a wood branch into a spike. He was working in the courtyard rather than his self-appointed workshop, since he had no desire to haul the obstacles out of the way. There was a word for it, he was sure, but whatever it was, he couldn't remember it, and Irvine had been no help. Braskar might know, but he always forgot to ask the orc. What is it, Braskar? Matt said tiredly. Is there something wrong, my lord? Braskar sounded worried after hearing the exhaustion in Matt's voice. Just you calling me in the middle of the day. Just before you'd cite trouble if someone was moving at 2 hexes a turn, in fact. Give or take an hour or 2, Matt answered. Ah, I see you have gotten ahead of my report. He's pretty smart, isn't he? Lacius said, surprised. He can hear you. Oh, I apologize, sir. It's fine. When you're as good-looking as me, you realize that most people think you're pretty dumb, Matt said. I have never... She hesitated, then added, You were giving me an excuse and a way out, weren't you? I was, Matt shrugged. It's fine. We can discuss my sense of humor later when Braskar doesn't have something dire to report. It is not dire, my lord. As you know, I am to meet with Lady Lacia in 2 days. However, it seems I have drawn out our opponent at last. You found their base, Matt said. Yes, my lord, Braskar said. You can see, of course, that the force facing me is somewhat, well... Spit it out. Matt brushed his hands and pants off, dropping wood shavings to the ground, and turned to the door. He would need to be in the map room to tell, and right now that seemed more important than making a proper abbati. That was the word, abbati. He knew watching all those Roman history documentaries for Ancient History 201 would come in useful at some point. Well, that and knowing how to make a road, though that was, it seemed, less important here. Total of 5 units, my lord. I can't see the exact composition. They move around in a very disordered fashion, it seems to me. None of this flying in V formation like proper avians. Braskar sounded almost insulted by that, which amused Matt to some extent. It did make him wonder why, if it wasn't for magical reasons, or if their opponent had sacrificed a degree of endurance to confuse matters. But why bother confusing matters at all? Unless... Hero. They might have a hero in that group. Sir? Lacia could not help but ask. No reason to give up the advantage of flying in formation, even if it's a magical world. The V is an aerodynamic property. There is a way that the lead duck breaks the air that makes it easier for every other duck or bird behind it to fly. Physics hasn't changed, so common sense shouldn't either. If they aren't flying like that, it's because they're trying to hide their numbers. Matt shook his head. No reason to hide numbers if you've got equal number units or types of units, unless there's a standout one. Like a hero, Licia said. Like a hero. He went up the stairs, taking them two at a time and then stopping to slow as he began to breathe hard. He hated not being able to exercise, especially as breathing hard meant the wound in his chest hurt even more. Why he couldn't get magical healing like the rest of the group, he didn't know. Not important. Can you retreat? Matt said. Braskar's voice was troubled, and then he made a little humming noise. Maybe. Then do it. Get out of there. Link up with Licia if you can. Then you can push ahead. You think the 5 units are enough to deal with my army? Braskar said. No ego in his voice and no challenge, which was good. If you think they will force the fight, we'll learn something just as valuable, Matt said. And if they don't let you back off, we'll learn something else too. He paused, then added, just make sure to call for help if you need it. Upstairs now, Matt went to the table and poked at the new flying unit notification on the table. Enemy army sighted. Quantity, 4 harpies, 1 hero. And there we have it. Matt frowned. Why bother with all that then if I just needed to get up here? Unless the hero is stupid or... We only started recognizing heroes when we got watchtowers, my lord, Braskar rumbled. That's what I figured too, Matt said. Or at least it was around that time they started spotting enemies with the aid of the watchtower. Before that, they'd had no quantitative data. So that meant the watchtowers are boosting our information-gathering ability even when you aren't near them. He grinned savagely. And our opponent has never bothered building them. Why would they not? Licia stopped, then muttered softly. I should stop talking before I think. They don't because they have flying units. Is that not right, sir? That'd be my guess. Probably figured they can range out far enough so there's no point in getting watchtowers. They probably can get within the next hex, or even launch an attack, get the information, and then fly off. No harm, no foul. Matt sighed. Not sure they're wrong. Except they're taking actions that offer no benefit, Braskar pointed out. Does it hurt them? Matt shook his head. I guess it doesn't matter, though it does make you wonder what mistakes we're making that we don't know we're making. It does make one wonder, Licia echoed. I shall pray for an answer. My lord, Braskar's voice interrupted the pair once again. Yes. Things might become hectic, so if there's nothing else, the orc rumbled. No, go for it. Matt shut his mouth and took a seat, leaning back in his chair. There was nothing else to do but wait to see if they were going to attack, and if so, support Braskar as best they could. The answer was slow in coming. It was always going to be, but time still dragged on for Matt. The former accountant found himself doing his best to keep himself busy, querying Licia about her background, doing occasional sit-ups, squats, and a single ill-conceived push-up, and even stretching in between. The only thing he could do that was of help was send a firecracker flower running after Licia, and move up a unit from here to town number 2. It was only when the hour was late in the afternoon, when it was clear that the enemy was not closing in from the distance, that Braskar was confident in declaring, They're not attacking. Matt finally relaxed. Until he remembered that this was just the first day. They could still choose to attack later. And there were still 2 more days to go before Licia could join up. Global Status Report at the end of Chapter 18. Day 81, end of day. Pooled gold, 134.25 plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 7 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown, none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal. Army number 2, Licia, 1 firecracker flower en route to Army number 1. Army number 3, 1 sakal, chasing raiders. Army number 4, firecracker flower en route to Licia. Army number 5, 1 firecracker flower en route to town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 3 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse 11 of 20. Woodling 3 of 4. Firecracker flower 1 of 5. Structures completed. Grove, road, stall 2, ranged copse, harbor, village number 2 watchtower, blacksmith, fishing dock, road to village number 3 watchtower, village number 3 horse farm. Structures available. Grove 2 watchtower, tavern, marketplace, ranged copse 2, stone harbor, shipyard, trading post, temple, blacksmith upgrade, fishing wharf, brisk nursery. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, tavern, wall, temple, stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, javelin range, training house, watchtower, blacksmith, temple 2, granary, running kennels. Chapter 19. It was midday the next day when Matt groaned. He was checking things over, having moved up a project from downstairs along with some paper and charcoal and big plates of refreshments, knowing he'd be up here for the foreseeable future. After taking care of adding a woodling to the mix, he had not much else to do, all of which meant that while his Sokol kept chasing around the other cavalry units, he could pay attention to the real problem, Braskar, and the 2 armies he faced. Enemy armies sighted. Quantity, 3 harpies, 2 harpy archers. Archers, Matt muttered out loud as he saw the details appear. That seems intensely unfair. My lord, Braskar said. Extra range, which means even if we had snipers, we'd be outranged. No way any of our ground troops can shoot them before they can shoot us. Why? Lacia asked. Physics, Matt replied. Greater height means greater range, Braskar said simultaneously. Then he added, that assumes, of course, that the bows are of decent quality. There are quite a range of such instruments, after all. Oh, good point. Now that he wasn't wincing at the thought of the new enemy units, Matt was envisioning the archers and realizing something else. They're also likely to have limited ammunition. Yes, so greater range, probably. First strike ability, almost certainly. But they might not be able to provide ongoing support. Braskar rumbled. Frustrating, but like any skirmishers, they cannot turn the tide of battle unless they have sufficient numbers. 2 units are nothing. Matt nodded in turn. That was all too true. He could not imagine they were bending the rules of physics that much that they were going to magically teleport or replenish arrows for the archery units, which also meant they might not be able to sustain more than 1 or 2 attacks before needing to retreat, Matt said, unless the system magically replenishes their stockpile. I would hesitate on believing that, my lord. Like my rations, it might be replenished each evening, Braskar said. What? Matt hesitated, then frowned. You get magical food? Yes. Did you not realize that, my lord? Not really. Didn't think of it, actually. He shrugged, then winced. He really should have considered it. After all, logistics was the job of the general, right? That's good, I guess. Also bad. Yeah, I can see how they'd recreate the arrows, but not in battle, right? No, not in battle, my lord. Lacia was silent, as was Irvine. The alchemist had little to add, at least to this side of things, and Lacia, while on her way to join the Orc, was still getting an understanding of this world. Never mind the fact that she was a priest and not a warlord. So what now? Matt said. They must converge on this hex, or launch attacks. Separate ones? Matt said, frowning. Can they do that? Does the system let that happen? Perhaps. Braskar sounded uncertain too, and Matt didn't blame him. Understanding where reality stopped and the weird rules of this world began was confusing enough. In reality, coordinating attacks across dozens of miles couldn't be easy, even if both parties were flying groups. If they could coordinate at all, they might need to slow down and speed up and make sure they all arrived within minutes, if not seconds, of one another. Otherwise, the firecracker flowers could reset and open fire, and that was the major concern, making sure the ranged attackers they had weren't ready to pepper them before they landed, before the battle began, which meant coordination in the real world. Or the world might force them to hold off, stop there from being interference, maybe even stagger the battles. That would be the worst-case scenario for the Harpies, forcing them to fight twice over with brand new groups. If that was the case, Matt would have held back and grouped them into a full army. Odds of them joining together to fight, Matt said. Uncertain. Then... He hesitated, staring at the table and gauging what was happening, and then sighed. I guess then we wait. I'll go piss and we can see what happens in a few hours. Because that's when we'll know, right? Yes, my lord. Best case scenario, they attacked and the two armies would be forced to fight separately. That would allow Braskar to beat back both armies with injuries but potentially no major unit losses. Second best scenario, the two enemy armies chose not to fight right now, held off till they joined up in the hex that Braskar was within. They'd form a giant army, which would not be the best thing, but they'd still have to rush over to meet Braskar. And by tomorrow, or later today even, Lacia would only be a hex away. They didn't attack that day. That was the good news. The bad news was in the updated army information. Enemy army. Quantity: 7 harpies, 2 harpy archers, 1 hero. Compared to that army, Braskar was rather badly outnumbered. 1 firecracker flower, 1 Sakal. Even when it had just been the 4 harpies and the hero, he did not think they could have won that without major damage. Admittedly, the firecracker flower that Braskar was running was a veteran with upgraded stats, but still. Now, there was no doubt in his mind that when they caught Braskar, he was going to lose. Badly. His only hope was to meet up with Lacia, and that together, the pair of them could survive the attacks. 2 firecracker flowers were powerful, able to do enough damage to the flying harpies, even if the Sakal weren't of much use. Which meant, this morning, it was all about who could make it to one another first. Come on, come on, come on. Matt found himself chanting under his breath, watching the little units hover on the magical map. Nothing moved, for it never truly updated the actual movements till units were in another hex, so all he had were verbal reports, none of which were particularly useful. Worse, the area that Braskar was marching through was all fields and plains and some rolling hills, not much in terms of trees, which meant they couldn't even use them for aerial cover. All they could do was march and hope that Lacia would reach them in time. Since they only needed to meet, Lacia was marching to the edge of her hex and Braskar his, so that together they could meet up. Except, of course, their opponent was faster. All of which meant that Matt had no idea who had order of priority for the battle, if there was an order of priority. This is an insane world. It really is. Matt sat back down, put his head in his hands, and let out the biggest sigh he'd ever had. I'd say I wish I was back home, but anything's better than trying to balance an account. Literally anything. Melodramatic a bit, perhaps, but then trying to figure out where that extra 2 cents was missing could drive even the most sane person, well, insane. Even if, most of the time, you just shoved it in an adjustment account and called it a day. Unless you had an anal retentive boss that was trying to punish you for not wanting to work longer hours. You know, Irvine, if there's one thing this world is good at, it's work-life balance. Balance, Irvine growled. And you know, I could be doing something more productive than listening to you narrate your boredom. You could, but you yourself said you're a little nervous for our friend, and yes, balance. Like not working 80 hours a week kind of thing. Here you get about 10 hours of productive daylight, and then you're done. Finished. No more updates, come back tomorrow. Can't even make it give you more work if you want it to. What's the point of balance if you like what you do, if you love what you do? Irvine said. I worked for 3 days straight once, making a potion. Best 3 days of my life. A slight pause. Might have been the mushrooms that I was using, too. They made everything more fun. The look Matt gave him was all very skeptical. He knew Irvine well enough to know the man's version of fun involved more chemical than was wise. Then again, he'd died once. Maybe we can have one of those parties after Braskar survives, Matt said. Now that's it. Irvine shut up as another voice cut in. My lord, I see Lacia. However, I fear we will not make it. I must have our people set up if we are to survive at all. A slight pause, then he added, "It has been an honor to dance the blades with you, my lord." "And you," Matt said somberly. "One last thing." "Yes, my lord." "Don't die. That's an order." He could not see it, but he could imagine the orc's big, savage grin. Then, all Matt could do was sit back and wait. Global status report at the end of Chapter 19. Day 82, middle of day. Pooled gold, 158.25, plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 7 firecracker flowers, 2 sakal. Cooldown, none. Unit organization. Town number 1, Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, 1 woodling. Army number 1, Braskar, 1 firecracker flower, 1 sakal. Army number 2, Lacia, 1 firecracker flower, en route to Army number 1. Army number 3, 1 sakal, chasing raiders. Army number 4, 1 firecracker flower, en route to Lacia. Army number 5, firecracker flower, en route to town number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, 1 woodling. Village number 3, 3 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers. Town number 1 status report. In production, basic greenhouse, 12 of 20. Firecracker flower, 2 of 5. Woodling, 0 of 4. Structures completed. Grove, Road, Stall 2, Ranged Copse, Harbor, Village number 2 Watchtower, Blacksmith, Fishing Dock, Road to Village number 3, Village number 3 Watchtower, Village number 3 Horse Farm. Structures available. Grove 2, Watchtower, Tavern, Marketplace, Ranged Copse 2, Stone Harbor, Shipyard, Trading Post, Temple, Blacksmith Upgrade, Fishing Wharf, Brisk, Nursery. Town number 2 status report. In production, none. Structures completed. Den 2, Tavern, Wall, Temple, Stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, Javelin Range, Training House, Watchtower, Blacksmith, Temple 2, Granary, Running Kennels. Chapter 20. Things weren't as dire as they looked at first glance. All that meant was that it went from impossible to nearly impossible to attain a victory. There were a few reasons for the cautious optimism that Braskar was feeling. The first among them was the stand of trees, a small one but a stand, that he had spotted a short hour ago. He'd traded distance to meeting Lacia for angling towards the trees, because the additional cover it would offer his people was worth it. Of course, his opponents had spotted the problem as well and had sped up. For the last 10 minutes, he'd been dealing with the archers loosing arrows at his units, which, he had to admit, was the other optimistic portion. They just did not have the accuracy to fire over that distance. They sent the arrows high into the sky and were unable to actually hit their targets with any degree of regularity. Sure, by the time the arrows, which were coming in on a long lobbed flight, arrived, the striking power from falling from so far above was significant, but they'd also lost most of their forward momentum at that point. With the firecracker flowers higher than normal defense, the few that did strike did little to kill his saplings. In the meantime, other Harper units were flying in as fast as they could, trying to catch up. They were closing in, and Braskar was forced to glance back every once in a while to gauge the distance. Hanging behind, next to the much slower Harpy archers, was the hero, too far back for Braskar to tell what kind as yet. "We won't make it," Braskar muttered to himself. Not before the first of the Harpy units hit them, at least, which led him to wonder if he would be better off utilizing the firecracker flowers in a set position to fire back, dealing as much damage as possible, or if he should keep running, hoping they wouldn't be picked off. In the end, he made the best choice he had. After all, he'd promised his lord. "Turn around and retreat slowly to the tree line. Hold and fire when the Harpies attack. Retreat when they are gone," he commanded the saplings. Then his eyes narrowed in thought, before he added, "Use the potion of defense now." Their only potion. He wished they'd managed to get more copies, but that was all they had. In fact, he wished Irvine had learnt that potion of speed. It would have come in useful right about now. What was it that his lord liked to say? Shoulda, woulda, coulda? As always, the wood elementals had no reply, yet he felt there was a moment of connection, a way that those burning eyes in the bark focused upon him, the sway of arms and branches hanging around them that said they were ready. In their own way, the wood elementals were true warriors. He held their gaze one last moment, offered them a nod, and then took off, waving the Sakal after him. Time to go. Time to make it to the trees with his melee fighters. It would force the Harpies to come down, allow them to do battle where his fighters held the advantage. He glanced back as he loped forward, keeping his strides long so that he could cover the ground fast without tiring himself out completely. The Sakal were all around him, keeping pace with the slower orc. The Harpies were in the air, already in the stooping plunge with their wings tucked in, ready to crash into their enemies. Braskar cursed internally, thinking the firecracker flowers might open fire too soon. They didn't, though, instead holding back till the creatures were at the optimal range. The first crack of exploding seedlings flying into the air was punctuated by the striking of flying projectiles impacting fleshy, feathered bodies. The first attack was always the worst, and in this case, nearly half the units of Harpies leading the way fell. That, of course, left another unit right behind to keep coming, and the first half still angling down. Resolutely, Braskar turned away and focused on running. He knew how the rest of that fight would continue, for the firecracker flowers had another pair of arms. They would launch that attack at near point-blank range into the remaining Harpies, which would see most of them fall. However, there would barely be enough time, maybe not at all, to get a single volley on the second unit flying down behind the first. Those might see a few more who fell, but by that point, the weight of fire would be less because some of the firecracker flowers would be dealing with the surviving members of the first Harpy unit. Even if they didn't manage to kill any of his own saplings, it would be enough to throw them into disarray. When the second unit hit, he would start losing saplings. After that, the third would do even more damage. The fourth? There was no point thinking about it. Braskar had something more important to worry about on a personal level. When he had glimpsed back, he had noted that not all the Harpies had stopped to attack their rear guard, enough of them, of course, to make sure the firecracker flowers were lost. The other 3 units were winging their way to them now, coming straight for the group. And worse, the archers had shifted the direction of their attacks, targeting him and the Sakal instead. If there was one piece of good news, it was what he had seen when he had looked at the other hero. He was sure his lord had also seen it. Azima, Level 1 Winged Scout. Specialty, Scout. Skills, Greater Sight, Flying. Experience, 78 of 100. Attack, 4. Defense, 6. Power, 6. Knowledge, 9. A scout hero. Their flying and greater sight abilities probably were the reason they'd found them, but the fact that they'd had such a low attack and power meant that in battle, they were a non-issue. Braskar could crush the other one with one hand behind his back, he was certain. No, the major advantage for the other hero was that trying to run or hide was out of the question. It was likely that his flying skill was the reason for the lower overall numbers everywhere else, same as with the rest of the Harpies. Musings about the problem were ripped away as an arrow glanced off Braskar's armor, bouncing off the pauldron to hit the ground. He grunted, hearing a pained yelp that turned to whimpering. He spotted the Sakal that was hit as he glanced back, seeing them hobbling along, injured. The orc didn't stop. He knew better than to slow for a single unit, especially when there was nothing he could do. When the opponent had ranged fire and you didn't, or you were outnumbered, the only reasonable course of action was for every orc to look out for themselves and run. Run till you hit your goal, and then hunker down and wait. The world was cruel. The battles they fought even worse. Better to save some of the clan than lose them all. "My lord," Braskar called out, his voice firm. He had been thinking, considering his best options. "If the flowers survive the first run, if you can, heal them. I'm already watching." Matt let out a long hiss as he thought. "I might do it before the 4th unit. They're down to 1 unharmed, 2 injured now." Braskar hesitated, then grunted in agreement. He chose to let his lord decide on the matter as he was too busy running. The longer they could keep the firecracker flower active, the better. It was the only unit that could do significant damage to the flying units, and it would buy them time if the enemy focused on it. The screams of the Harpies, the flap of their wings, he could sense them behind, coming closer and closer. All he could do was run. By the time they reached the trees, he had lost a second Sakal pup. He himself had gotten a wound, a cut along his forearm when an arrow had managed to find a gap between his elbow guard and his bracers. Luckily, it had deflected enough that it had not lodged deeply, and wiggling it out and tossing the remnant had left him with a bleeding but minor wound. Only when they were in the rough center of the small number of trees, barely even a dozen of them altogether, did he spin around, putting one of the trunks between him and his opponents. They had slowed their attacks with the bows, hovering in place, the last couple of units having landed to finish his injured Sakal. They'd made it. Barely, but they'd made it. Now the question was, what would their enemies do? Chapter 21. "Hurry, Lacia, hurry," Matt chanted softly. He had already repeated those words once to the priest. He could not do anything else, and so he watched the firecracker flowers do their thing. They were surviving, barely. The increased defense, their higher level, and thus increase in firepower and defense, it was all making a difference. Not enough. So far, his opponents had yet to lose a full unit. The first one had been savaged badly, but he had no time to call the firecracker flowers to attack the single harpy left behind that was flying away. Strategically, even if he sacrificed total damage output, taking out the unit now and not letting it heal and regenerate new unit members was the smart thing to do. But that would mean less damage now, less of the harpy units in total in this battle. And if Braskar had any hope of surviving, they needed the max amount of output of damage. He wished he could have tossed a lightning bolt, but they were too far away from the town, too far to offer any aid but healing. So he watched, lower lip worried between his teeth as he saw the numbers of the firecracker flowers drop. The second harpy unit fell, nearly losing half their number. They took out 2 flowers, though, before they winged away, and only lost 1 of theirs in the clash. Then the third unit hit, and he lost 3 more flowers, only 1 unit somehow managing to escape harm by sheer luck. The chaos of battle and all that. It was so strange, so remote, watching numbers flash up and disappear on the map. The temperature up here was a little cold, but nothing too bad. He was comfortable, even as a rainstorm raged outside his window, the occasional rumble of thunder breaking through, the smell of falling rain, of the comfortable drumming of raindrops on the roof. Perfect gaming weather, where no one complained if he didn't leave the house to see the great outdoors. Complete nonsense when others were dying, at his behest, on the other side of the map. The third Sakal unit broke away, a couple of harpies staying down long enough to savage one of the damaged flowers and end them. Time. He stabbed his finger on the spell, watched light play over the firecracker flowers, hoped it was enough. Because that was all he could do. She could see them. She knew they could see her. The horse she was riding was being pushed harder than any animal that she had ever ridden before, and Licia was cursing her lack of riding experience. If she was a little better at it, perhaps she could remember how to stay on the horse better, make it easier on the poor animal. If she was a little better, maybe they could have reached Braskar already. Not that she was the only holdup. These moving trees, these swaying stalk and trunk and branch creatures unnerved her, more than she'd like to admit. Though they had never done anything to make her worry about them. No, her nerves were entirely due to their alien nature. What kind of mind looked at something so different and decided that it was the best choice for allies? She did not know, and was worried that she might never know. He was so different, and it angered her that she failed to understand. After all, that was one of the major tenets of her faith. Understand, sympathize, guide. Control. And this mad rush of clopping hooves, hard-breathing horse, and the silent creak of wood and plants, what kind of control was there to be had? They were dancing to the tune of their faster opponent, an opponent that watched her coming, that had full knowledge of her arrival and control of whether to engage or flee. It was maddening. It was frightening. It was ridiculous. "Faster, faster, faster!" she chanted over and over again under her breath. She could feel her god reaching out through her, touching the horse, the creatures beside her. It sped them up a little, gave them energy when they would have flagged. All for the best, even as the harpy units stooped through the air, flying slowly into the small copse of trees. They couldn't do their dive bomb attacks, not without risking life and limb, so they were coming in slowly, turning to tear at the Sakal who lay waiting on the ground. The Sakal and the orc, whatever that was. The Sakal she saw soon enough. It had been described to her, so when she saw the loping creature come tumbling out of the woods, holding onto a harpy with its mouth and its clawed hands gripped and ripped, the pair tumbled end over end for a time before the Sakal came up on its feet, tearing its head sideways and ripping a hole in its prey. It threw its head back to howl its victory, only for a pair of harpies that had been patrolling the copse on the outside to fall upon it. Another brief skirmish, this time the creatures coming down in a swooping attack that left long tears across flesh and knocked the Sakal over. It attempted to stand, managed to make it to its feet and begin retreating, only for a pair of arrows to land. Finishing it off, it was clear that anything outside of the copse would die. Anything but the firecracker flower that still stood, farther away. Staggering back, one tree-limbed hand gripped the body of a harpy to wave off its attackers. The other remaining arm grew in size, so that when the second harpy attempted a flanking maneuver, it was greeted by an explosion of seeds. The attack was timed and angled so that another harpy, coming in from the side and higher up, was caught too, the creature forced to flap and back off as it was trailed by falling feathers and blood, unlike the shredded remains of the other. Even so, there were at least 8 of the harpies left and a single sapling. The outcome was clear. Making a snap decision, she reached forward with her faith. She tried to envelop the other wood elemental with it, but failed. If it was a true believer, but of course it was not. Again she spurred on her horse, urging it to go faster to cover the ground necessary. She kept reaching out, trying to feel the connection that was necessary, all the while watching the flower fight on valiantly. It should have died, if not for the shrill cawing, the notice that her presence and that of the new unit brought. She saw some of the units turning away, coming for her. No rhyme or reason, no indication of why these other units were attacking her. She could see the hero waving its wings, desperately calling forth, and she realized perhaps this was not a matter of control, not a matter of choice. She was sure Matt would have a reason, a way to explain it. All she could think was that she was in trouble if those harpies reached her before she had backup. Yet she kept pushing onwards, rushing ever closer until she felt it. Like something snapping into place, a wood joint sliding together neatly. She threw the full strength of her ability at it, calling upon her god to assert its dominance over this world. Healing, or a version of it, as reality returned to what her god willed it. Firecracker flowers reappeared all around the surviving one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 saplings, all standing there together, hands raising as water filled the flowers and they aimed their arms at the descending birds. Then she was reining in her horse, trying to back off before the other harpies fell upon her. Chapter 22. Yes, Matt hissed, watching the saplings repopulate on his map. He did a little dance, knowing that meant that Lacia was finally in the fight. Now they had a real chance. The harpies had taken quite the beating, though they had only lost 2 whole units so far. They managed to pull back some of the units when they got too injured, somehow able to selectively call for retreat. Perhaps it was a racial thing or some other finer method of control for the enemy. Matt leaned toward a racial trait, just like their flying, an ability to preserve their numbers where otherwise they would be forced to fight to the end. He did wonder about the first battle, why they had not fled, but could come up with a million reasons and never know it for truth. After all, not all the units had retreated when they should have, so it might just be a percentage chance thing, and his own units might have that as well. A morale break, which wood elementals just didn't need. A break, that was. The archers were still flashing once in a while, but much more slowly. Whether they had run out of arrows or were close to it, they rarely did anything. All but for the one angling for Lacia, that was. Lacia cursed as she fell off her horse. She managed to roll enough so that when she hit the ground, she only drove most of the breath out of her body. For a moment, she lay stunned, before an arrow landing just in front of her face made her twist and scramble upwards. A shuddery, indrawn breath allowed her to breathe, sucking in air through a bruised chest. Cursing, she reached sideways and almost tugged the arrow in her side out. She paused as she remembered her training, then felt another arrow cut through the air and strike her shoulder, bringing more hissing pain. Resolved, she pulled hard, screaming a little as the arrow emerged and ripped open her wound. Then, she forced her healing through her body, fixing the problem. It was dangerous to extend her faith so often, though it was easier when it was her body, her faith. After all, she was closest to her God. No time to consider it, though, no time to wonder for too long. Instead, she twisted and ran to the side, trying to dodge the arrows. She was thankful that they were slowing down, even as another arrow tore into her, lodging in her arm. She stumbled from the pain and impact, cursing internally. She realized she would never make it. Not to the copse of trees, not when more harpies were on the way, were already fighting within. She had given the others a chance to win, but she wondered if it had been worth it. After all, she had just come back alive. Then, a crack. A rippling series of large cracks coming from behind her, shrieks of harpies, the screams of the dying. Turning around, she realized the firecracker flowers were firing on the archers, ignoring the trio of harpies launching their attacks on them. Why? How? "Don't just stand there! Run!" Braskar roared, waving at her from the trees. Now she realized what was happening. He must have used his command ability, made the firecracker flowers guard her rather than themselves. She sprinted again, hissing with each jolting step as the arrow in her arm moved, but she did not stop. By the time she got under cover, the firecracker flowers had the full attention of the archers and the remaining harpy units. Only 2 harpy members, circling around, came flying towards her. Braskar grinned widely, his eyes glimmering with hunger as he hefted his axe. "Good timing. We might just survive." A hesitation, then he looked back around. After a moment, he seemed to come to a decision. "Support the flowers. We need to end some of their units." "Of course. I just need a moment," she exhaled, shifting away deeper into the trees. She realized he was ignoring her already, eyes focused on the harpies winging their way down. She had no weapon. A mistake, a foolish one. She should have brought one, but she had not been thinking. Hadn't thought she would be risking herself so directly. Hadn't realized she would be forced to do this. Now, she was useless. Glancing around, she grabbed for a stick she saw not so far away. She stumbled over to take it and turned to help Braskar. She immediately lowered it again. By the time she had done all that, the fight was over. The first creature had been killed, bisected by a strange red light that had appeared around the orc that she had caught only a glimpse of. It shot out and killed the flying creature, giving the giant bark-skinned muscular orc time to kill the other. The skin color bothered her, but only a little. The color was unusual for sure. Black, yellow, and purple were more appropriate. The tusks were a bigger issue, for she had never seen that before. But seeing flying humanoids and wood elementals and half-animal beings already, it was less of a concern. Second monster dead. He stalked over to her and pointed behind. She spun around and saw the firecracker flowers she had come to save down once again, to only 2. She felt within, realized she had maybe 1 cast left in her. She threw her faith at the creatures, watching them bloom. "Focus. We'll talk later." Licia could only grunt agreement, as a wave of exhaustion took her. He didn't even pause as he bent down and picked her up, carrying her further into the trees. He set her down as a Sakal came trotting up next to them. This battle was not over, even if, in her estimation, they had a real chance of winning now. Chapter 23. What was that saying? There's nothing worse than a battle won, except a battle lost. Matt sort of understood it now, though he still felt a rising sense of jubilation deep within as the notification appeared. Battle report. Heroes Braskar and Lacia versus enemy units. Result: victory. 1 Sakal unit lost, 3 Harpies defeated, 6 units, and 1 hero escaped. Rewards: +6 gold, +3 reputation. They had won. More than that, they had just laid a crushing defeat on their enemy. Even when their enemy had double their units in total, they had lost. He had won a staggering victory, and a part of him just did not believe it. "Everyone okay, right?" Matt asked once again. "We are fine, my lord. Lacia has healed herself, and has begun the process of healing the rest of our units," Braskar said. "She can heal them outside of battle?" Matt said, eyes widening. If that was the case, the priest was much more powerful than he had thought. At the rate she could heal, it would be literal hours before their units were back to full strength. And it was very clear that the individual units needed it. They had lost their last Sakal via an unlucky shot by the retreating archers, ending them as a threat. That left the firecracker flowers, who were still alive but desperately needed more melee help. Weak as they might be, if the Harpies just landed en masse and fought close quarters, he had a feeling he'd lose units again. "Not exactly, my lord. She says she can feel her connection to her god is frayed. She will be able to heal them slowly, but not to the same extent. Not if we wish her to be of any use," Braskar clarified. "I see. All right. Still, accelerated healing is good?" Matt trailed off. "Is it me, or did we win that a little too easily?" Lacia said. "Not that it felt easy, but—" "No, you are correct," Braskar rumbled. "This was easier than I was expecting. They are much more vulnerable to our firecracker flowers than expected. They fall too easily to attacks." "Tell me about it," Matt said. Braskar relayed the battle from his viewpoint, Lacia interrupting and adding her own thoughts, few as they might be. In the end, Matt could not help but mutter, "A bad choice or a bad usage of the enemy race's benefits?" "Sir?" "We get to choose our races." Lacia made an affirmative noise, and he remembered that the heroes gained some innate knowledge upon their resurrection. He pushed that thought aside, or his own curiosity about why he didn't have any, and continued. "So perhaps the Harpies were a dud race. One of those that look great on paper, but their disadvantages are worse than you'd expect. Or it could be that they're being used badly." "How would you use them, my lord?" Braskar asked. "Separate armies from you guys, I think. Priest with them, for sure, maybe a warlord, but you can't fly, so, He licked his lips, thinking out loud. "Larger groups, no scout teams, but groups of, say, 4. You use them to harry attackers, hit and run. It seems the Harpies can retreat, so you let them do that. Hit once, pull back. Hit again the next turn with the priest healing. Maybe even rotate between armies so that you don't just have one army. Combine that with a slower, normal army below." "You might lose units." "Yeah, but if you can retreat with most of them intact, you can build up experience, become tougher, force your opponent to take losses, then hit them with the anvil when they've gotten confident." Matt shook his head. "Maybe I'm overly optimistic. Maybe you would lose too many for it to be good." "Perhaps, my lord, but I concur. Harassing tactics to wear down an opponent seem to be their optimal strategy," Braskar intoned. "They were just basics. Was that not right, sir?" "What?" Matt said. "Basic units, not like our cavalry options," Lacia clarified. "Yeah, not even sure they're upgraded." Matt trailed off, eyes widening. "Jammed printers." "My lord?" "They're basics, and we're not in the basic end of the game anymore." When there was no expected reaction, Matt continued in a hurry. "They're going to be upgrading with others. Vanguard Harpies, Harpies that might do more damage, better ranged units, something." "Ah." Matt's gaze dropped to the map, biting his lip. He drummed his fingers, then spoke. "Let me know tomorrow if you're going ahead or pulling back till reinforcements are arriving, but I'm sending the woodling we have from the second town to you." He bit his lip, thinking, "I'll get one more from the second village to you, too." "If you're stripping the town, I'll send a woodling from mine. Wish I could pull a woodling from the other village back here, but they're pinned. We'll be short, but not horrendously so. Matt hesitated, then nodded. But whatever happens, we need to hit that army. Finish them before they upgrade, or at least before they can field heavier units. Agreed, my lord. A slight pause. Sako? Matt bit his lip, debating. They were useless against the harpy units. Too soft, too easily taken down. Potentially useful against the cavalry units, but those were stuck. His army pinned down. If he'd created them, he'd be waiting a little, pulling back on his other cavalry options. Then again, he was busy building as much as he could. I'll start now, he said. All right then. Get rested, and let me know your decision tomorrow. Matt hesitated, then added, Good job. Thank you, my lord. Killing the connection, Matt turned back to the map, adjusting marching orders. He hated it, but it had to be done, especially when he saw his armies spread out all over the map. If those raiders ever decided to get serious, if another cavalry army showed up, he could be defeated in detail. He was gambling, and he knew it. And, deep in the pit of his stomach, he could not help but think that at some point, he was going to roll the devil's eyes. Global Status Report, at the end of Volume 4. Day 82, end of day. Pooled gold, 139.25, plus 44 gold per day. Total units, 8 woodlings, 7 firecracker flowers, 1 sokal. Cooldown, spellcasting 0 of 7. Unit organization. Town number 1. Irvine, 2 woodlings, 1 firecracker flower. Town number 2, empty. Army number 1. Braskar, Lacia, 2 firecracker flowers. Army number 2, 1 sokal, chasing raiders. Army number 3, 1 firecracker flower en route to Army number 1. Army number 4, 1 firecracker flower en route to town number 2. Army number 5, 1 woodling en route to town number 2 from town number 1. Army number 6, 1 woodling en route from Army number 1 from village number 2. Village number 1, 1 woodling. Village number 2, empty. Village number 3, 3 woodlings, 2 firecracker flowers. Town number 1 status report. In production. Basic greenhouse, 12 of 20. Firecracker flower, 1 of 5. Woodling, 0 of 4. Structures completed. Grove, road, stall 2, ranged copse, harbor, village number 2 watchtower, blacksmith, fishing dock, road to village number 3, village number 3 watchtower, village number 3 horse farm. Structures available. Grove 2, watchtower, tavern, marketplace, ranged copse 2, stone harbor, shipyard, trading post, temple, blacksmith upgrade, fishing wharf, brisk nursery. Town number 2 status report. In production, Sokal, 05. Structures completed. Den 2, tavern, wall, temple, stall 2. Structures available. Den 3, javelin range, training house, watchtower, blacksmith, temple 2, granary, running kennels. You've been listening to Magic Kingdom at War, Volume 4, written by Tao Wong, read by Neil Helligers, a member of SAG-AFTRA. Copyright 2024 by Tao Wong. Production copyright 2024 by Starlit Publishing.